Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. This is a weekly online call-in discussion show that focuses on the religion of Islam and related topics in juxtaposition to the propaganda of Muslim apologists, the far-right conservative Christians and other parties of disinformants. The Gin and Tonic Show aims to bring a balanced perspective on two issues pertaining to Islam, presenting accurate information in order to educate its viewers on Islamic history, scripture, theology, and politics. Okay. Rob is away, and I was noticed quite late, so I haven't prepared that much. Yes, so I thought that this time I'm gonna paste the link, but I'm gonna try a new thing this week. We can, what should we call it? Not Code Napoleon, but maybe Code Rationalizer or Code Caliph Coin, because it's a mix. Back in the days when Gin and Tonic Show was on Skype, the Rationalizer invented a kind of code or rules, or whatever you call it, where like participants digitally kind of raise their hands before speaking. So I'm going to try something similar today. Like if you want to speak in the Hangout, I will say in chat, it's not, but if you want to join the Hangout and speak, you can type H in the like internal comment. There's an internal chat, and then you could speak. Press H for hand, and then I can see who pressed H first. If you want to speak, you press H, and then I'm going to try to do something else. I'm going to steal rules from soccer, and so if you want to speak, like I can give like a yellow or red card. So like if you make a kind of minor offense, like you start to speak like without raising your hand first, or something like that, then I give you a yellow card, and if you repeat this, then I will give you a red card and kick you out. Hopefully I won't have to do that. And then there are other things, like if you, for example, if guys that once come on the show and just yell the N-word or other things, and then I'm just going to give you a red card immediately and kick you out. Also another rule is if you go on and rant for several minutes, I will first ask you to wrap it up, and if you don't do it, I will give you a yellow card the first time, and if you continue to do this, that I ask you to wrap it up, but you just continue, then I will give you a red card. I think we test these rules tonight and see how it goes. So that's my condition, because I don't know, Rob don't like this, that we paste the Hangout in the chat, but anyway, I think since he's not here now, we do this. Stop spamming, says, and I thought I was the tyrant. Yeah, we just test this. I mean, do you say that the referee dudes in soccer, that they are tyrants? It's just rules. We need some kind of rules. I'm not gonna. Yeah. Anyway, so there's the Hangout link. I haven't prepared anything really today. Oh, there, stop spamming. No, it's just you and me, so we don't have to have these rules right now. But I thought it would be interesting to test if we later get like 20 participants. It's tend to be chaos otherwise. H. Tafadal, stop spamming.
I will be a good boy, sir.
Okay, that's fine. I don't hear you so well, but I turn you up. Okay. No. I mean, we don't have to do this when it's like 2 people, but if we get, I tell you, if we get like 3 or if we get like 4 or 5 people, especially when Muslims joins, and anyway, I haven't prepared that much. The first thing that come to mind, something you can talk about without being prepared, is the situation in Syria and Iraq, and just talk about the situation and my okay, stop spamming. Jacked up his microphone. Good. I put you to max also.
Don't, because it was on 0.
Okay. Yeah, but I don't know, where should we start? Should we start reading the news? One thing that we could start with is just talking about the different factions that are fighting down there, because I think that is something that confuses people. But I don't know, maybe I'm the only guy that is really interested about this. Rob, how was the hangover after being demolished by Subboor? I'm not Rob. Rob may be joining later. He's working late.
Rob was demolished?
Well, I think that's truth with modification.
Because I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, I must say that I'm a bit skeptical. But I don't know if you're interested, but it's like the kind of different factions, because it's a mess down there. So, but I don't know, are you really interested in this, or should we take some other topics? I'd like to hear about it. Okay, good. Okay, so maybe this is my I'm afraid that I'm the only one who's interested, so maybe it's like, but anyway, so Free Syrian Army, this is one of the groups. FSA groups have continued to reorganize, conducting what has accurately been described as decentralized insurgency throughout Syria. Major battles that have been fought of late are O servant of Allah, stand fast in Damascus, and we saddled the horses in eastern Qalamun, which both began in March 2017, as well as battle in the path of God, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if this is so. But Free Syrian Army, I think, is not that hard to understand. Maybe, I don't know. While in the past groups tended to drift away from the explicit FSA identity, a recent trend has been for groups who had adopted Islamist symbolism and rhetoric to shift back to adopting more nationalist-style imagery. Notable examples include Levant Front, Al-Rahman Corps, and more recently Islamist faction Jaish al-Islam. Another example of this was an ex-Jabhat Nusra Shura member, Saleh Hamwi, starting that the time had come to declare that the Islamic project in revolution had failed and a clear nationalist project must be advanced. So the Free Syrian Army is kind of more of, they are very not hardcore when it comes to Islamism. Jaish al-Hur, like consists of many like former, like Syria has this weird how do you say English, Alawite sect that Bashar al-Assad, he's from this, and these are weird, like Shiite sects that have very weird aqidah. But they are not the majority of the population. So these Free Syrian Army dudes, they originally came from from the real Syrian army, but since they are Sunnites, they can't really fight for Bashar al-Assad, and a lot of people hate him, understandably, especially among the Sunni population. At one point, I thought Rob was gonna cry, but God was merciful to him. Yeah, that would, I'm sure. Yeah, so that's the Free Syrian Army. I don't know if they're that interesting. They are kind of... Okay, here's maybe some new updates. Significant changes include United States, US, and United Kingdom, UK-backed group. The new Syrian army dissolved and remnants re-emerged as the revolution's commandos army. 101st Infantry Division withdrew from Northern Division and rebranded as 21st Unified Force. Army of Liberation rebranded themselves as Al-Nukba Army. 16th Infantry Division rebrand as Division 23. This is just nerdy stuff. Southern Front. Yes.
Can you explain like the basics? Can you, because the way that I understand it is that basically we are looking at different groups who all have a common goal of ousting the dictator, but as soon as that common goal is reached, they will all have substantial differences.
Yeah, this is in Syria. I'm here. Maybe you can show a map also.
Yeah.
So you have different groups fighting, and you know, like how the revolution started, and you have like different interests and so on. And but this one big faction are the kind of more... I mean, to say that they are secular is maybe not with Western standard, but you know, compared to ISIS and the former Jabhat Nusra, they are kind of more in the secular direction, although the completely secular thing is... I mean, you can argue whether that really exists, but anyway. So
but there is no group which is not a Muslim group.
Well, I mean, that depends on who you can make takfir on and so on. I mean, the ISIS guys will say that everybody except ISIS, and maybe they don't make... I mean, they kind of make takfir on everybody else. So, like, it's very intertwined. Everybody that fight ISIS says that ISIS, either they say that they are Khawarij or that they are Kuffar, and ISIS make takfir on everybody else, and Jabhat al-Nusra, or that doesn't call themselves Jabhat al-Nusra anymore, they kind of make takfir on many people, but they are kind of ambivalent towards ISIS. That's a very long story. And then they are... I mean, it's very many details. There's some guys they may make, like for example the Kurds, for example, that are very... many of them they are communists. They make takfir on them, and so it's a mess. That's a whole topic for itself. But if you say, like, objectively, is there any non-Muslims? I mean, among the Kurds there are non-Muslims. I know. I mean, there are even Westerners there who fight with them. But among these groups, they all kind of use some kind of Islamic propaganda. Even these guys, like Ahrar al-Sham and all those guys, they also say that they fight in the Quds path and so on. Although I don't know how much they believe their own words. But anyway, Southern Front of Free Syrian Army. The Southern Front of the Free Syrian Army groups continued to inch closer to ever more inclusive coalitions in order to make great use of their forces, which are likely greater than a previous estimate of 20,000, including the myriad of minor groups in southern Syria. In southern Syria, 3 significant Southern Front coalitions have formed recently: Jaish at-Tawra, Muhajir Support Operations Room, Coalition Forces of the South. Someone, yeah, when it's not in Arabic. Major developments in southern Syria include ongoing clashes with Jordanian/Western backing in Daraa against ISIS affiliate Khalid ibn Walid army, as well as the major Southern Front-led battle, Death Over Humiliation, that began in mid-February 2017 and liberated the vast majority of the heavily fortified Manshia district in Daraa city. Excuse me, when it's not in Arabic I get confused, but okay, so here this Ahrar al-Sham, which like the ISIS guys and maybe Nusra too says Ashrar al-Sham. Ahrar al-Sham means like the free of Sham, the free of the Levant. So in Arabic you say the Ashrar al-Sham, that means the most evil of the Levant. Harakata Ahrar al-Sham al-Islamiyya. So Haraka means like the movement. Ahrar al-Sham, the free of the Levant. Al-Islamiyya means the Islamic. So they call themselves Islamic, but ISIS and Nusra, like it's a long story because Nusra sometimes can, in some situations, they might ally themselves with these more kind of secular leaning groups, but sometimes they don't. But so it's a mess, and that's one of the reasons why the ISIS use that in their propaganda. And yeah, anyway, but it's not really you can use like isti'ana, like for take help from kuffar in battle, as long as you do it with the right intentions and so on. Now I'm just talking about Islamic Sharia here. So Harakat Ahrar al-Sham, commonly known as simply as Ahrar al-Sham, emerged at the beginning of 2012 with its exact founding date remaining uncertain. Unlike other groups, Ahrar al-Sham's members have claimed to have began to form armed groups after the Arab Spring reached Egypt, even before March 15, 2011, when the Syrian revolution began. In terms of foreign support, Syria analyst Omar Özgülüş has confirmed that Ahrar al-Sham received grants from Qatar. Without a doubt, the most significant development in Syrian opposition landscape has been the rise and ensuing rivalry of Ahrar al-Sham and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which we will come to later. So this is important. Without a doubt, the most significant development in Syria opposition landscape has been the rise of ensuing rivalry of Ahrar al-Sham and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Yeah. In the wake of the Syrian opposition's military defeat of Assad, governments, Iranian and Russian-backed forces in the Battle of Aleppo at the end of 2016, the groups active in the greater Idlib, including newly displaced Aleppo groups, were thrown into turmoil. Seizing upon these developments, Jabhat Fath al-Sham attacked several prominent FSA groups under the pretext of anti-jihadi clause being a condition of the Astana peace talks in Kazakhstan. and quickly declared the creation of HTS a few days later. As a result of this, there has been a great sorting out, with radical Islamist-oriented groups and subgroups joining HTS, and more moderate factions seeking the protection of major group Ahrar Sham. In this way, the botched creation of HTS in some ways backfired, with several major FSA groups joining Ahrar Sham, where they enjoy some measure of autonomy, whereas HTS demands the full merger of groups joining in a manner much akin to the so-called Islamic State. Independent Islamists. Now we're more getting into my guys here.
Abu,
Yeah.
BJ is making a good point. Is there, well, he's asking a good question. Is there any group here that actually tries to incorporate everybody, gives everybody a fair share, while at the same time carving out a state and some kind of a government that is there for everybody? Or is it just everybody for themselves and every group against everybody?
Well, I mean, you can say that the Kurds are a bit like that. I mean, the Kurds, but look, like, I mean, if you're a Westerner, you can be an atheist and go to Rojava or there, and they like the Kurdistanic, especially in Rojava. So they are like including everybody as long as they are under their kind of under their flag, so to speak. But then you have the situation in Syria, which is very complicated, because one day, like the groups that are less extreme in the Islamic direction kind of collaborate with the more extreme groups, but then another day they're like, no, but then we want to get weapons from the other countries like America or whatever, and we don't get any aid from them. So one day they collaborate, one day they don't. So it's a complete mess. I mean, you have to. It's a bit like this discussion whether, you know, you have to be updated on someone's gender identity in. If you go to Harvard or something, or you're going to be a professor in Harvard, you have to be updated every single minute for every student's how they identify themselves, if they're a male or a female or somewhere in between.
It's
a bit similar here. You have to it's when we're speaking now, they maybe they're changing themselves all the time. So it's changed from day to day who they collaborate. There are general patterns you can observe.
It's such a good analogy. Exactly, yeah.
There are general patterns you can observe, but like especially the non kind of Islamic groups are they are more interested in kind of winning, I think, than really establishing Sharia and so on. And then you have more the extreme, like ISIS. They just hate everybody but themselves. Everybody that is in the ISIS, you can go and die. So, I mean, now when they're starting to lose, maybe they're starting to get, okay, maybe we should kind of maybe it's not so smart strategy to alienate ourselves from like the former Al-Qaeda guys. So, I mean, that was one I think about. We should talk about later, like what do we think will happen in the future and so on, because that's a funny discussion thing we can talk about. But one possibility is that ISIS, when they're losing, they're okay. Now we're gonna join forces with all the Al-Qaeda franchises, and so that is one possibility. But when they were at their peak, they were kind of against everybody that wasn't Dawla. It was Dawla or nothing. It was ISIS or nothing. The number of independent factions has dwindled in the wake of Ahrar Sham HTS rivalry since the beginning of 2017, as the luxury of such autonomy is often no longer possible in the face of a predatory HTS and resurgent Assad government. One of the few to emerge recently, the tribe of youth movement of Hama, I don't know, is likely to have links to the Ahrar Sham. In a surprising turn of events, the Russian Minister of Defense has recognized several of these groups as moderate. Yeah, moderate. Yeah, that's a good word, moderate. The more moderate ones, including Ahrar Sham, Jaish al-Islam, and Sham Legion. Among the more recognizable of the smaller of these groups include Ajnad al-Sham, Sunnah Army, 2 Jaish al-Fath member groups who may still be in this still active coalition. Yet only 2 major independent groups, in addition to the ascendant and already discussed Ahrar Sham, remain. So here's like Sham Legion, these are like smaller groups. Sham Legion, also known as Faylaq al-Sham, founded March 10, 2014, are well-established Islamist faction in northern and central Syria with estimated manpower of 4,000 fighters, a successor of several former FSA groups, which straddles the divide between moderates and more hardline religious groups. This latter trait became most apparent of late in a statement the group made offering them to mediate negotiations between Ahrar Sham and HTS. Sham Legion are Turkish MOM, Joint Operations Center backed, and TOW anti-tank guided missile supplied. Blah blah. This is a small group, it's not that interesting. Jaish al-Islam are a large group, well, large, but relatively. Are a large group of 70,000 manpower, likely several thousand less due to the subsequent loss of its northern sector, which was founded in October 2013 as a merger between 50 groups, with that number rising to over 60 within a few months. A predecessor group called Liwa al-Islam had been founded some time after June 22, 2011, and a few months after Sahran Aloush had been released from prison in the early stages of Syrian revolution. Before that, Aloush had briefly led the small group Kitabat al-Islam. Jaish al-Islam is politically important due to the proximity of their stronghold in eastern Ghouta to the Syrian capital of Damascus. This faction is known to be well armed, including owning a 9K33 OS. This is military equipment. It's just they have heavy duty stuff. Anyway, we jump to this. They're not that important, but this is one of the factions that are there. Now we jump to a more important, Hayat Tahrir Sham. The creation of Hayat Tahrir Sham. Excuse me. The creation of Hayat Tahrir Sham HTS on January 28, 2017 was spearheaded by Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, the rebranded successor group of powerful jihadi al-Qaeda affiliate Jabhat al-Nusra, along with several former hardline Ahrar al-Sham members, including the founding leader of HTS, Abu Jabir. The founding members listed in the first official statement published by HTS were Liwa al-Haq, Nuruddin Zanki, Jabhat Fatah al-Sham, Sunnah Army, Jabhat Ansar ad-Din. Nice picture there. Heavy duty guy. Maybe we can do like this so it becomes more. Yeah. The goal of HDS was Syrian opposition unity under Salafist elements and leadership, with the poorly hidden hand of former Jabhat Nusra leader Abu Muhammad al-Julani lurking in the background. This effort largely failed to produce the results that were desired for by Islamist hardliners, other than several of the main Sunni jihadi groups on the ground in northern Syria joining. The only truly significant Syrian opposition groups to join were the Jaish al-Fath coalition, member Liwa al-Haq, and former TOW ATGM recipient Nur ad-Din al-Zenki, while some elements of Ahrar Sham and Sham Legion were initially drawn into HTS. These groups managed to stem the tide of defections quite quickly. Jaish al-Faruq of Hama, a once major FSA group with sectors across much of Syria, was the only significant group of a couple hundred men to join HTS on March 20, 2017, long after the initial foundation of the faction. The future of HTS represents great importance and danger for the Syrian opposition going into the future. Important to note is that some have taken the rebranding of GFS and HTS more seriously than others, with influential Jordan-based jihadi militant scholar Abu Muhammad al-Maqdisi being somewhat critical of HTS and fretting our role of the diluters. This Abu Muhammad al-Maqdisi is a story in itself, maybe, if you want. He's a funny guy. Maybe we can make a whole show about it. Several small jihadi groups were who fight alongside both the Syrian opposition and HTS have merged with the recently formed latter group, and other who remain nominally independent are clearly within the sphere of influence, such as the Turkestan Islamic Party and Nogai Jamaat.
Abu, what makes the guy funny? Do you have an example?
He's kind of an old jihadi sheikh that he comes back from the Afghan period. He was in Afghanistan, and he was in he have met many mashayikh, and he started in Saudi Arabia, originally from Palestine. Moved to. He has a funny life, and he's a funny guy. And there was a lot of kind of intrigues between him and Dola, and Dola said that he was. That's a whole soap opera in itself. What happened between him and ISIS? I mean, we can have a show about him. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. I love. Is he ex-Taliban or Al Qaeda or something?
No, he's like Al Qaeda, but he's from the old guard. He's been with us for I don't know how many, before I was born probably. So he's an old dude.
This would be nice just to have even just 15-20 minutes, not the whole episode, just one segment.
But it's also fun if you know Arabic. He's like some of these dudes are kind of funny. It's a bit like, you remember Gaddafi? I mean, Gaddafi he's a terrible guy. He was kind of funny also. He's a funny character. I mean, in a sick sense, but you see what I'm saying?
I was just going to say, I didn't see the joke in what he did.
No, it's not a joke, but he's kind of. It's a weird character. It's an absurd character.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Did they I think there even was a movie about him. I haven't seen it. There's a comic movie like The Dictator or something. They imitated Gaddafi, and Gaddafi used to go up and be his own kind of stand-up comedian and say all kind of crazy stuff. And he's but some guys are more kind of interesting. Like if you take, for example, like Osama bin Laden, like he's an interesting guy, but he's not that funny because he's too controlled and well behaved. But this Al-Maqdisi Sheikh, he's more like a comic person, I think. Anyway, a major event that occurred recently was the fighting between. Well, I read that. Or did I? Several smaller jihadi groups who fight alongside both of the Syrian opposition HTS have merged with the recently formed latter group, and others who remain nominally independent are clearly within their sphere of influence, such as the Turkestan Islamic Party and I don't know that. Nogai Jamaat. I don't think it's Arabic even. A major event that occurred recently was the fighting between the re-emerged Jund al-Aqsa under the new title Liwa al-Asqa and the rest of Syrian opposition, as well as HTS in Hama and southern Idlib, and extremely bloody conflict that left over 100 dead and ultimately forced the ISIS affiliate group to leave for Raqqa. Yeah. Yeah, so here you can see like the map of how the situation looks like today. Let's see, present everybody. Where do I have that? Yeah, so here you can see like here where it's black. Here's kind of the Dola territory, which used to be much larger. And here you can see Mosul. Dola still control a little, ISIS still control a little area here. It's very hard because they are dug in and put themselves in strategic position. From the Second World War, being in a defense position might be advantageous. And here you have the Kurdic dudes. Here also. And here is like the normal Iraq regime are taking back territory from ISIS. And here you can see where it's red. Oops. Here where it's red, you can see are like the Assad forces, their regime forces. Whereas green, you can see various kind of all this like Ahrar al-Sham, but also this Hayat Tahrir Sham, all kinds of groups. Like, and they're also often like back in the days when it was Aleppo here. All kinds of groups were in that town, so you have, it's not even like, and it's still like in Idlib, for example, you have all kinds of group in Idlib, and yeah. And here you can see minor clashes between Sultan Murad Brigade and Ahrar Sham continues. So here's some new events, what's happening here. Yeah, but what are they saying in the chat? The West created the mess in Syria by supporting and arming a violent uprising. Well, stop spamming, help me. What are they saying in the chat? Okay, but
with what? I can't. I don't have all the background on this. No. You do.
You're a better host. You have these host skills that I don't have. Okay.
No, you're doing a great job because you're explaining everything in great detail. and making it alive for people. I think this is brilliant. So I think this whole topic, the way that you're doing news and then everything that you're putting in there is great. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I haven't prepared anything, so I haven't thought like, how do you make this kind of pedagogical? And therefore, I want some feedback from the chat.
Well,
like, are they?
The only thing that I'm missing is sort of like in between, just to add the bigger picture again, to show where you are now in these groups, and to show where the relative position is towards the politics of Bashar, this Bashar guy, and what it is that he is not doing, and so on and so forth.
Okay, well, that's a long story.
Well, that's what we're here for. We're here
Yeah.
I
must think I'm completely unprepared. So what should I say? Yeah, so like so Bashar and those guys, he for a while it looked like he was about to that they had a lot of problems, like, but then Russia came into the picture, and thanks to Russia. And also, we should say, but this is more not that official. But that's, I was also thinking about talking about the Shia militias in this area. Maybe I should do. I do that afterwards. Okay.
Are you doing a short sequence on this, or is this going to be the whole show now today?
No, I'm just starting this. Rob said that he had to work, so I'm just starting this. And if someone wants to come in and chat about something else, we can talk about that.
Yeah, because Rob is on his way, and the thing is that I've got somebody in the chat here, this Raki guy, who's just screaming his head off and just making a total fool of himself. So I would love for him or her, I don't even know if it's him, if it wants to come here and talk to us and just sort of give us the knowledge of what he is saying there, of what Subboor said to Rob, then Raki, you are bloody welcome to come here and give us the whole thing in a concise nutshell and tell us the entire argument, your side of it and everything. Then we'll take a break. Until you are man enough or woman enough or it enough or whatever it is, if you don't have the guts, if you don't have the balls, well then shut the fuck up. If you have something to say it out loud. Don't go dropping hints and putting pieces and there. Come on here into the show. This is what we are about. We're here to have a discussion. If you can't handle that, it doesn't work. Otherwise, we're just going to continue with Syria, where I think it's a very, very interesting and fascinating topic to understand what is actually going on there. That's it. Thanks, Abu.
Yeah. So if you want to come on the show and say anything or discuss anything, you can just come on the show. Oh, no, Rob has joined.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
No, nobody can hear you. Nobody can understand you.
No, you.
There he goes again. Yeah, one day, inshallah. You can inshallah every inch and every centimeter of your Allah. It doesn't matter one day. Yeah, when it's what?
Inshallah. Okay.
No, centimeter Allah.
Centimeter Allah. Yeah. Where are we? Yeah, so here is like the Iraqi forces. Okay, you see this thing. So yeah, so you have this the Russian dudes. They are helping Assad because they are their allies. But you also have, because they have kind of geopolitical interest there. They also have another ally, which is Iran. And they are like not very officially, but they are aiding their Shiite allies in although they are a different sect of Shiites because they're Ithna Sharia, like the 12 Imam sect. And they are kind of aiding them because they are Shiites, or well, Shiites, they are Alawites, but they're kind of in the Shia direction. So they are aiding. So Iran is aiding them also, not only Russia, but Iran and Russia are kind of our allies also.
And
But they're also,
Turkey? What role is Turkey playing in this?
well, Turkey was a little bit more complicated. You know, remember back in the days, like before Turkey shut down an Russian airplane, if you remember that. And that's
Yeah.
because Assad regime traditionally is not an ally of Turkey. Turkey is like, well, they're the broader kind of Sunni spectrum, although Sunni is maybe not. But you see what I'm saying? And this Erdogan, he's kind of Ikhwani, you can say, like a brotherhood, Muslim brotherhood, kind of. Muslim Brotherhood like. So there was a fight between Turkey and Russia, but now they seem to have come together and shake hands. So now you even have some kind of collaboration even against ISIS. But I think ISIS, I don't think they will survive that much longer, unless something really, because like now you have everybody is against ISIS more or less. So I don't think they will survive anymore. But that won't be the end of the story, because that's when I want to go into like these Shia militias also. Maybe we might say in Turkey also that Turkeys have traditional problems with the guys that are influential in this area, the Kurds. So you know that the problems with PKK, say like that in English, PKK. So they are not that happy about the Kurds, but in the same time, so it's a mess. Like it's a geopolitical game that sometimes, I mean, Turkey was often accused of supporting ISIS and so on. So it's a mess. And you also have the Qatar and those guys that are aiding groups here. But I think I want to say something about the Shia militias, because I think they're gonna play in the long term important role. Is it this one? Yes. So I read directly from the screen. Hamam al-Iraq, blah blah. The road to Mosul is littered with the detritus from almost 3 years of war. Burned M1117 armed vehicles, sandbag berms and trenches from defensive positions. Once manned against Islamic State fighters, houses pancaked, that's a word, houses pancaked by airstrikes. The long supply line of the Iraqi army stretches through villages with bulldozers, camouflage trucks and temporary base camps. Particularly noticeable are the frequent checkpoints manned by young armed men, but the fighters often aren't from the Iraqi army or the federal police, but are members of various Iran-supported Shiite militias in the Shababi or popular mobilization units. While taking part in the US-backed assault on Islamic State's groups' last major stronghold in Iraq, many of these units fly flags celebrating Shiite religious figures such as Imam Hussein and some others. Anyway, this is not the point. Is no, I had another article. This is maybe a better beginning. Where is that? From Al Jazeera. That's a better beginning. Iraq's parliament passes law legislating Shiite militia. So this is article, as you can see, it's from 2016, November 2016. But this is like how the Shia militia thing, like you can see the weirdness of it. Iraqi parliament has passed a bill recognizing the Shia militia fighters, the Popular Mobilization Forces, as government entity operating alongside the military. The bill passed on Saturday will see the establishment of Popular Mobilization Forces Commission, which critics said could only widen sectarian division in the war-torn country. Prime Minister, anyway, so this is like, they passes this law that Shia militias are kind of legal. And now when they are taking back areas from ISIS, they are kind of retaliating on the Sunnis and killing Sunnis. There's a documentary, I think it is a British documentary, you can see they go in here and look at what happens, with the Shia militias goes in and they kill Sunnis and torture Sunnis and even go in kind of refugee camps and take away the Sunni guys, and they are kind of making life problematic for Sunnis. It is almost as if they want to kind of exterminate the Sunnis from Iraq. And this is, and also what is in the documentary was very clear is that they have Iranian guys go over there and help the Sunni militias, and they are kind of half merchant, half it's called mercenaries, half mercenaries and half kind of the Iranian government support them, because Iran has their interest there as well. Here they're in a former ISIS hospital and they're taking it over. I wanted to find the picture when they go away with the dudes to execute them. Maybe it's not good to show those pictures anyway. The point is, the Shia militias are not nice guys against the Sunnis. And what will this have? What kind of consequences would that give? What would result from that? I think the way the Shiites are kind of taking over Iraq, and the way they are treating Sunnis is not good news, because that will create more incentives for Sunnis to join whatever extremists will be left, or whatever. I think ISIS will disappear, at least in Iraq. And but what will happen after that? I don't think that extremists, like the kind of branch of that ISIS represented, will just disappear. And the way the Shiites are treating the Sunnis will just create further incentives to create more conflicts. So there maybe will be an uprising one more time up there, where the Sunnites, at least for now, are the majority. And there's going to be a lot of problems. That's what I think. But so that's an important part of the story. Yes. Was there anything more?
So who is going to win it out in the end? Is it going to be Islam? Is it going to be the dictator? Or who's actually going to, sway the masses? And what does it take to stop this?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's what I'm thinking. It's interesting to try to forecast what will happen in the future. But right now, I don't really see any solution. I mean, when you have this, like, do you remember last week we were talking about the Mongols? The Mongols lived in a kind of similar situation in the sense that they consisted of various tribes that were in war with each other all the time. But then suddenly you had this very powerful guy, this almost kind of Napoleon figure, Genghis Khan, who emerged and united the Mongol tribes. And then he kind of, yes, he killed the Tartars and so on, but he united the tribes, and then suddenly he became the uniting force. But I don't know, can something similar happen in that region? I have a hard time. I don't think it's so, because like the Shiite Sunni split is so, it has. It's not just that it's different tribes that are warring against each other, it's different religions, so to speak. I know that many Westerners think that Shiism and Sunnism is Islam, but in a way they are both Islam in a way, but they are like religious division that is hard to solve. And then you have the Kurds, that's maybe a little bit easier, but yeah, I don't really see that. I have a hard time seeing any kind of Napoleon figure suddenly arising and putting a stop to it. But often when people get tired, they often they want someone like Napoleon. I mean, one of the reasons why Napoleon, yeah.
So exactly, this is exactly what I was just going to say. Do you think the Kurds would have this kind of effect if they were to have their own state?
Not, they could get their own state, but they will not have the same effect on. So the Kurds, and I actually think that they should have their own states. I think that would be a good force, but it will only be a good force in the area that they control. The Kurds can just take whole of Iraq, and I don't think that's not the really. They can't take whole of Syria. So yes, they can be a good force in the area that they control, and maybe people can flee there and so on. But in the real Iraq, down further south and in Syria, I don't think that's possible.
Okay, but then if you look at it like that, then the dictator, and it's regardless whether it was Saddam or whether it was Gaddafi, or it doesn't really matter which dictator it was. This was the pacifying or the common enemy that everybody was hating, but that's why you had this relative sense of stability, isn't it?
Yeah, like one of the reasons, if you take Napoleon, for example, like you had to remember that you had this like a very disturbing period. You had the terror, like what was it, like 55,000 people was killed in Paris, I think, or something like that. And you had the sack of Lyon, and it was a mess during the time. During the terror was terrifying, and after the terror, after they killed Robespierre, it was a mess. So people was kind of tired on it. So when Napoleon came and like, okay, now I'm just gonna sort things out and I'm gonna establish some order, people was very happy. Oh, finally, a dude comes and brings some order. And that is often that is something that could happen if you can have this strong dude that you can just go in. I mean, one thing, I'm not a big fan of Erdogan, but if you think about it, the Ottoman Empire was kind of this unifying force before. If you look at the borders, for example, like if you look at the borders, these were like drawn up by European powers.
British and the French, yeah.
Yeah, after World War One, but this was like Ottoman Empire before. So one thing, like the Erdogan guy, he seemed to be kind of a megalomaniac guy. So one thing that could be this kind of Napoleon figure, but I don't think this will happen. But this would be like Erdogan, because Turkey has a really good army. They are a really powerful army. I think that if Turkey wanted, if they could get Russia on with it, or maybe some other ally, maybe US, if they wanted to go in and like whoop, take over Iraq and Syria and kind of create a new Ottoman Empire, I think they could do it because their army is way stronger than both the Iraqi and the Syrian army and all these factions there. So they could maybe and start a new Ottomanic Empire and say, we are the Ottomanic Empire and I'm Erdogan is the Caliph. That could maybe be that kind of unifying Napoleon figure.
But isn't that where he's going? Exactly where he's going? Exactly isn't that what he's doing?
I mean, I hope he doesn't look at the Gin and Tonic show, so I don't give him any. But that is the only thing I could see. But it feels kind of unlikely. But who knows? I mean, the Mongol event was kind of unlikely. But if I'm going to see what I think can happen, I think it will just continue and it will be a mess. And I don't know. I can't see that the war will stop the nearest years. I think groups will. It's a bit like a Darwinian soup or Darwinian petri dish, where like groups disappear and then new groups emerges, and new groups are kicked out, and then they re-emerges, and it's a mess.
So that means there's never going to be any peace.
I mean, eventually, I think there's going to be peace, but I don't see anything like it will continue to be like this unstable until something stabilizing happens. But for now, unless Erdogan goes in with his massive Turkish army and just takes over everything and re-establish the Ottoman Empire, that's the only. It's not plausible. Or I mean, it's not. I don't think that will happen, but at least that's the only thing you think of.
Yeah, but then if Syria, okay, there are so many. If you look at the king in Saudi, if you look at the emir, if you look at all these people are all dictators. So you're never going to have any kind of peace unless there is a dictator. So this is what Erdogan is doing in Turkey now. He's going to be the dictator. So you're going to have peace and quiet in Turkey because the Kurds are not, and PKK and all that, are not going to have a leg to stand on. So you're going to have this semi-stable situation due to the fact that there are only dictators left. Because as soon as you go and abolish the dictators, be it Hussein, be it Gaddafi, and so on, you get this funny influx of instability, which you are showing just now, all these different groups, which initially go and go against Assad or whatever the case may be, and then they are at each other's throats. So only the dictator in that region, in that group, in that well, it's not a country, is it? Whatever it is going to have some sort of stabilizing effect.
I mean, and another thing, but that could be kind of horrible. But it could also be that, like, since Russia is really powerful agent right now, and they are allied with Shiite regimes, it could also be that the Shiites go in and take over and completely, maybe not exterminate Sunnites, but kind of really oppresses the Sunnites until they are slowly
dying out. Well, look at Bahrain. There's the opposite. There you have the Shia majority who are being oppressed by the Sunni minority.
Yeah. But I mean, like, if you look at right now, the Sunni dudes are losing, you can say. The Sunni, or at least the ISIS, ISIS in the sense, they are kind of losing now, so the Shiite guys are taking over and they are treating Sunnis badly. But maybe the Shiites in Iraq would just, by help of Iran, this is kind of unharmed now. We'll just take this over. We'll just kind of more or less kick out the Sunnis or completely degrade them.
It's like what they're trying in Yemen.
Yeah, and then maybe until the Sunnis are so weak that they can't resist anymore, or maybe they're exterminated. So the problem is that there are too many Sunnis. So these two big projects, like it's too big project. There are too many Sunnis, so I don't think that's likely. That would be an extraordinarily huge massacre. And
Okay,
if
so how do you see the role of Hezbollah and Hamas?
well, Hezbollah and Hamas are two different things. Hamas are more like more that they are kind of a hardcore version of Erdogan, or like more Islamist version of Erdogan.
Yeah, but Erdogan is a Sufi.
Yeah, but they are kind of Ikhwani like that, under the broader umbrella of Ikhwani, of Muslim Brotherhoodism. But Hezbollah, they are Shiites, and they are one of the kind of Shia. So they are one of the like groups that Iran and are using to get power in the Levant, and Iraq is not so important. I mean, Iraq is very easy because they are a clear ally with Iran. They are, as I said, there are Iranis there.
Are they?
Give them military aid.
Really? What is Iraq, really? I don't know what Iraq is. At the moment, I have no clue.
The Iraqi Shiites, or
Iraq.
the Iraqi.
Iraq was fighting, I mean, like crazy. They were fighting Iran.
Yeah, but that was back in when
80s, yeah.
Saddam. But Saddam was Sunni, and many of the former.
No, Saddam was Ba'ath, something completely in the middle.
Yeah. Okay, he was Ba'athist, but his original religion was Sunni, and he made Tawbah and lost in his life. His last word was Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And then, so many of the military dudes in ISIS are former military guys in Saddam's army.
Yeah, from Iraq, exactly.
Yeah, from Iraq. But today, for today's Iraqi regime are controlled by Shiites. Yes, there are some dudes that they say they're Sunnis and so on, but in real life, it's the Shiites that control the Iraqi regime now.
I'm not 100% sure of that, because I think it's a wild mix and it's in between. There's every single group.
Yeah. Yes, it's a wild mix, but in practice, it's the Shiites that has the control.
No, I think it's okay, theoretical, because that's what the Americans want. That's what they were trying to propagate, to create a counterpart for the Saudis to strengthen the Sunni, the Shias, because the Sunnis were too strong and too dominant. I think this is what the long-term goal was for the US.
But the US is a mess, because the US is also not an ally with Iran. And they are officially an ally with Saudi Arabia.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah, but their position there is like weird. Like
It is,
back in it's promiscuous, you can say. It's
opportunist.
Yeah, opportunist, and there's kind of a divide or conquer. They don't want one fraction to be too strong and so on. So that's a mess. So. Yeah, but like the USA are not there anymore with their whole like as they were after the invasion. So in like real life, like where your soldiers are and where your position is very important, and Iran is just next door, and Iran has a relatively strong army. Soon maybe they will get nuclear weapons also, and that is also another thing that can like say that Iran suddenly gets nuclear weapons, despite that they are claiming not to develop nuclear weapons, and then Israel gets angry. Then maybe Israel attacks Iran, and then they are dragged into this also. So it's not
It's goodbye Middle East.
Yeah.
And then Pakistan comes in and so on and so forth, yeah.
Yeah, and then Pakistan comes in. It's a mess.
Okay, so in other words, the summary is it's a fucking mess.
It's a mess. And I'm trying to figure out what will happen in the future, but it's so complicated. And if anyone can help me.
What's up, guys? How you guys keeping?
Next topic, please. I think we've exhausted this one. I think it was it's a very good summary. Mess.
It's a mess.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. How you guys keeping?
Well, and you?
Yeah, good, good.
Well, and yourself?
Yes, I'm good. I'm good. Obviously, it's been a fun week. I see some Muslims are peeing themselves with delight on the video with Subboor.
Yeah, you got roasted apparently. I haven't seen it yet. I'm still catching
No,
up.
it's up on one of the Muslim channels, so I'm doing an edit response because I think this is apart from the nature of the interaction. I think there's a lot of valuable topics that were covered there, and so I'm doing quite a bit of research on this. I've got a couple of other people that I've reached out to as well for some explanation. So essentially what I'm going to do is upload my version, which was the start to finish, but I'm going to have commentary along the way for all the claims, or as many of the claims as I can, that were made in the video. So everybody thinks it's a walkover. So we will there'll be a lot coming. So anybody who's interested in truth, and that's possibly not all Muslims, but I do think that there are some. So I won't say that. Perhaps we'll watch it with and get some, learn something new. So, but certainly I will be. I will have some answers to a number of those questions that were put to me, and I will have somebody else explaining it that's even more knowledgeable than I am. So that'll come up hopefully next week in different parts. It takes such a long time to research things because obviously I want to be accurate and truthful. I don't just want to put out claims there. So,
but that's,
come on, things.
I remember I did Subboor when he did this funny evolution thing. I roasted him with a video. Then Aaron Ra came and roasted him, and he still comes back for more. What do you expect? There is nobody who will accept the honest version, the fact-based version, the one based on reality. They're not interested. It's all about polemics. It's all about propaganda. That's it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that seems to be true, and the same thing is the case with Subboor. Throw out a few names, but I'm going through the video slowly, literally, like every few sentences, whatever happens. So when I'm done, I will probably know the video pretty damn well by the time I'm done with everything that was said there. I can't appeal to authority, but it's okay for him to do it. Little things that most people won't notice. So when you watch it, particularly if you're sort of a biased Muslim, then you and you're not paying attention. There's a lot of things. But even if you aren't, there's a lot of things that happen that when I went and watched it back again, I went, wow, okay, I missed this or that, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things that I will bring up over some time, and I wanted really more as a baseline reference, and I've reached out to the guy that I said refuted him. Apart from you, I didn't know you'd done it as well, Stop. So maybe I'll have a look at your videos with the other guy I knew about, and he's given me all his videos and so forth. So there's a lot here. So in actual fact, it's going to turn out, from my point of view, a very valuable learning experience. So I'll quote Hamza, which is, I can never lose in speaker's corner. I can only learn, quote unquote. So that comes directly from, Hamza's mouth. So I'll borrow his thing and then let's see, which he said to camera, by the way. So I think there'll be some very valuable learning in it for me as well on some of these topics.
Great, looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that'll be out next week. It's just so time consuming to go through and look through, all the references and go read the materials and stuff. Claims about this one being an atheist, this one being an atheist, this is the paper they said, etc., etc. Fortunately, as I say, some people are helping because it's just such a big task over such a long period of time. But I think a lot will be revealed, and so that will be useful in the future, especially for atheists like myself or others if they come across these sort of things in the future. So particularly this thing about, which was asked in the comments as well here, particularly this thing about, rationality. So this will be a big one, and I'm going to let somebody explain this a little bit better than I can. I don't know how much you guys wrote that one.
Okay, there's a comment now. Rob, why don't you discuss further with Subboor? Subboor is an idiot. Okay, I'm sorry to have to say this, but I've been in touch with him for like 2 or 3 years. I've tried talking to him direct when they still had their talk-in, when they still had their show, and it's impossible. Subboor is really uneducated. He really does not know what he is talking about. All he does is learn a couple of sentences, what other people have said, what Christian apologists have said, and then he just repeats them and thinks that he's made a point. He has not. It's useless trying to debate with Subboor. It's useless trying to talk to Subboor. We've seen this with Aron Ra. I mean, Aron Ra had ridiculed him. He absolutely wiped the floor with him. And he still says, I won the debate. That's stupid. And this is why nobody wants that. Nobody wants to talk to Subboor because he's such an idiot.
Okay, so I agree with you in the sense that, well, I will speak to him again. So in answer to Saracen's question, why don't I discuss further with him direct? I will do so, Saracen. So if we come to Speaker's Corner again and some of these topics are brought up, then I will have that conversation. And now I will have more information to hand. But I'm going to do the video so that it stands there as A, a refutation, but B, more importantly, an education in a lot of these topics. So in future, I can point people to the video and say, hey, here was the claim made. I've done the research, because as you know, because you've been to Speaker's Corner yourself, you can't do a refutation live if somebody's just throwing out all kinds of quotes. Now you've got to go onto your phone. There's a big group of people standing around. You want to try and have a dialogue, which didn't really happen. It felt more like an interrogation, but that's all fine. But it's not easy to do. So I'm going to have a reference where there's time taken and these things are done. And then when the conversation does come up, I will have all of these on my phone ready to hand. And I don't have to go and searching for them, because I would have taken, a week out of my time to do this. So I'm quite happy to have a conversation again, as long as it's a, how would I say, more friendly discussion, because you may not see it so much from the video there, but obviously when my video goes up, it's from my point of view. He basically came there, and I've got a word for it. He came there to try and make me look foolish, because I go there to quote his words, I go to Speaker's Corner to confuse people with my nonsense, quote unquote. So I've got that quote written down. That moment in time, I should definitely have stopped the conversation right there and insisted that he provide evidence of that, or to take that back if he didn't. I've never gone there and told any Muslim they are intentionally confusing people. I think they believe what they believe. Whether they themselves are confused, that's the difference. I could be confused about something, but I don't go there and go, okay, let me go and confuse these Muslims so that they have no clue what's going on. That's not it's exactly the opposite. That's more of a Shabir Yusuf tactic. That's not mine. So, yeah, I'm quite happy to say.
Raki, if you have, if you've grown a set now in the last 10 minutes, why don't you come here and provide your point? Just bring your point, instead of just throwing darts out in the background. If you have a point, why don't you come here and bring it? We'll keep quiet. We'll let you talk. Go ahead and bring it, instead of just always no. Yes, Subboor is uneducated. He's an uneducated fool. I've said it several times. I've proven it. I've demonstrated it. I've shown it to be true. I've provided examples several times. Yes, he is an uneducated fool. Now, are you going to be able to bring up a point? Are you going to bring up a summary, or are you incapable and running away?
I'm not sure if Raki's there. Saracen, I appreciate your comments, and as you know, you apart from having disagreements with the panelists here, which I'm totally fine with, other than that, you seem like a reasonably fair guy, I could say, in some way. Yes, you have beliefs that differ here, and yeah, things stops, and Abu, will have opinions on that. But I do think you may, you're potentially a fair-minded person. So go and have a look at one of the, it's on EF Dawa, I think, is one of the places where it is. But as I say, mine will be up from start to finish, because mine started the moment the conversations sort of started there until Mine will be split, so it'll be my conversation with Subboor, and then after about an hour and 30 minutes, there was another atheist behind me who had about a half an hour conversation. So I don't know whether I'll have that in my part of the video or just have that as another part of the video. And then Darren Hamza thought he'd have a go with the atheist behind me. I also had a couple of other conversations with Darren, which I will upload probably after I've done the research on this video. So it's quite funny. So
that'd be great. Okay, the question, Klingschor. Klingschor was told that he is not going to be academically recognized if he continues on his path, doing YouTube videos and having discussions on the Jinn&Tonic show. So he has decided to go the scholarly way and go more serious.
Who's that, sorry?
Klingschor.
Who's Klingschor?
The originator of the Jinn&Tonic show.
Oh, okay. So he's moving on to other things.
Well, he did a while ago. He deleted everything. He deleted all his accounts. He deleted everything he's ever done. He asked me to delete the Jinn&Tonic show when I took it over, and he just went completely bananas. The thing is that he's not a strong character who will go and say, "This is what I have done." I've told them there are actors like what's his name, Sylvester Stallone. I mean, he did porn, he did the soft porn, he did all sorts of things before he became recognized. So what the hell? Do people now go and look at Rambo and say, "Oh, he was just a porn star"? No, they recognize Sylvester Stallone for what he did, what he contributed, and that is it. They don't care about what happened in the past. And the same, I think, should be true for Klingschor. Something that has built him into the man that he is. I mean, he used to be Christian, he used to be Muslim, he used to be, I don't know what all things he was. But it's part of the building of the personality and the human.
I mean, we should say that we're not saying that Klingschor are making porn movies now. Like,
you wish. But no, DPR was trying to get him to do that.
It was kind of anyway. But like if it's kind of weird. He's going into an academic career and he don't want to be associated with the
no, he was influenced. He is somebody who is easily influenced, and that is what happened.
I don't think is it really this academic career. I mean, like I know that in academic careers there are a lot of, unfortunately, still to this day. Like if you have any kind of opinion, you can't write books and you can't be a professor in the university. That's why it's good. Like guys like Gad Saad, for example, have this YouTube channel.
Yeah, he's great, isn't he? Gad Saad's a legend.
Yeah, Gad Saad the legend. We should get him on the show.
Oh yeah, I should actually.
I tried. He rejected.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
But that was 2 years ago. But I don't know. Maybe now he's so over. He's benign by now, because in those days he was just up and coming. So maybe he didn't want to ruin his reputation. Maybe today it's something completely different.
But the thing is, like it's like they say in like Max Tegmark. He says that like he lived a kind of double life where he was interested in these kind of things. Like I've been talking, remember Hugh Everett's World Invitation and his view of reality existing in a mathematical structure and all this. But he lived a kind of double life where he did ordinary science and read ordinary articles first, but then on like his kind of spare time he secretly printed out like Hugh Everett's paper and did all these things. So fortunately we're not living in a real open society where you can pursue an academic career and still be interested in crazy things, which is really sad. Because if you take the greatest guys like Isaac Newton, for example, I mean, Isaac Newton spent most of his time researching Bible stuff and alchemy and things like that. And this mathematics stuff and calculus and physics, I mean, that was just a side issue. But that's what we benefit today. So I think it's really sad that we can't have an We can't be in such an open society where you can pursue crazy things and have crazy ideas and don't lose your career. And I mean, that's really
Depends
sad.
what you mean by crazy, I suppose. If it's like you're a comedy guy on the side, that's fine. If you're a child molester or some other crazy.
No, but like in the realm of ideas. I mean, one of the reasons why I think Western society like suddenly like whoop, became industrialized and developed is because we had the Enlightenment and the tradition where you can question everything and can elaborate on crazy ideas without like being. I mean, you need to be able to have crazy thoughts. It's like evolution. Like 99% of all, or 99.99% of all species dies out, and it's the same with the ideas. Most ideas, you have to test them, and bad idea, and then you throw that away, and then you have another idea, and then you throw that away. That's how you make progress. You need to have that kind of process, and the kind of society that allows that will be so much more a huge advantage.
But give us an example of what you mean by crazy ideas.
Like Max Tegmark, for example. Like if you were talking about like things like Max Tegmark talk about, like believing in your Everett's many world interpretation and things that your Everett's many world interpretation is correct. I mean, today it's kind of mainstream, so now it's not. But like back in the 20th century, like the years after your Everett wrote his paper, I mean, you could like destroy your career by pursuing that interpretation, which is really stupid. Because yes, the only thing that can happen is you get into a dead end and you turn out to be wrong, but then you have gained anyway. In science, you gain when you make mistakes, and you gain when you don't make mistakes. You test the theory, and if it survives, it survives. It doesn't survive, it doesn't survive. And that's like the spirit of the Enlightenment, and it's too bad.
Yeah. Saracen's asking, what was the question he was asking? Hang on a sec. Rob, can you share some of Subboor's claims for those of us who have not seen the video? I mean, obviously go watch the video, but I'll give you a few very quickly. It's what I consider refuted claim now about Justin Barrett and Olivia Petrovich saying that the belief in God is innate. In fact, they haven't said that. They haven't published anything in any peer-reviewed journals. So I'll go into more detail, but that's one of them. So, quoting these people as evidence for an innate belief in God is untenable. I mean, you can keep doing it if you want to. You're just not going to be considered an honest person doing that. Some of the other things here that came up. The other claim was, religion since the fall of the Berlin Wall. I don't know if he actually meant the Berlin Wall or the fall of the Soviet Union, but regardless, religion and the pew polls has gone up. Well, yes, it has. People who say they are religious have gone up, but actually they're not visiting churches. They're not doing anything that relates to that. So one of the things the Pew says is, the fact that they're calling themselves more religious now, or there's more people identify as religion but not going to church, suggests that nothing's really changed in their life. They're just using a label. So again, that doesn't really mean anything.
But I think like what religion kind of fills a role in human life that I think in a way, now I'm not talking about particular beliefs, but like Gad said, he is like researching human evolutionary psychology. So evolution has given us certain we want like community, and we want some kind of meaning in life and so on. So I think religions benefits from this. And one of the things that I actually think that, and this is kind of clear, like Niccolo Machiavelli, he wrote that like if when you take over, you should kind of you should take away all the old like institutions and re-establish your own when you take power. And this is what, like, for example, Joseph Stalin did. So he kind of destroyed the churches, but then he kind of created a cult around himself in the place of the churches. So the Communist Party and the communist government became a kind of a church in itself. And so I think there is a need, there is a human psychology, and human social psychology is kind of steeped in a certain way, and religion parasite on that, or we should call it, or it adapts to that. I don't know how to find the right words here, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of theories out there as to how people come by religious belief, and what Barrett and Petrovich actually said when they were pressed on it is that there's a propensity. Now that's not nowhere near the same as saying it's innate. And of course, they studied children who were between 3 and 5 or over 4 years old. There was a Japanese study. Somebody's asking, Rob, what about the research about the Japanese children? Well, there was study. Petrovich did study these children who don't have a belief in any sort of God. The Japanese society doesn't have a belief. So, but again, the questions were framed in such a way as like a why question. So what I would call leading questions. So somebody says to me, why is there purpose in the universe? That's the wrong question to ask. We could ask, is there purpose in the universe? That's a better question to ask. But why implies that there is purpose, and now we've just got to find it. And so when you ask children why questions, they are more likely to come up with like a superhuman, supernatural explanation because their minds haven't developed, etc., etc. So the fact that children will jump towards supernatural or superhuman type of things, and there were certain questions as well. All it says is that they haven't grown up, they haven't got an understanding of the world yet, and so they're very likely to, give agency to things around them because they just don't understand the world. Science is not an easy thing. If none of us had learned science, we'd still believe that the gods were throwing thunderbolts down. And so it's an understanding of the natural world, which isn't a natural thing, i.e. understanding through the scientific method. That's not a natural thing. You don't grow up with that, so you don't grow up learning how to do that. You've got to learn it gets taught over time. So yeah, I'm it's definitely not, as far as I can see, it's definitely not an innate claim. You can't use that as an innate claim.
But it's a claim to functionality, where they say, well, what is the purpose of a tree? Well, it's for birds to sit on. So this is the way, or for to be against. So this is the way that they see the functionality of something, and not the spiritual or transcendent or whatever thing.
Yeah, and actually what Petrovich actually said, which I'll have all in quotes, so everything I'm saying here I've already read up in an interview. She basically said, we've got to be careful what we say about God. All children kind of mean is like a gaseous God, as in like it's the air type of thing. That's all they mean.
Yeah, exactly.
And even Japanese children tended to answer in that way. But what, again, she hasn't published the book. It's been put back. And so the book that she was supposed to publish was not, she stopped short of doing a peer-reviewed article or journal entry, so she's got to do her own book, just like Barrett.
No, she did. Petrovich made an entry in yes, where is it, in Belgrade? I can't remember which of the Yugoslavian countries it is in. In Serbia, I think it was, because that's where she actually comes from, and this is what she did. That's where she published it, because she knew nobody will read it.
Have you actually got a link to that, Stops? That'll be useful, because
I did this in the video when
peer review? Was that peer review? Was it peer review? Because all of Hamza's, I was in contact with somebody, all of Hamza's links were researched by somebody, and not one of them, if you can point me to one, that's good, but not one of them came up as a peer-reviewed journal. So in other words, and the disadvantage, just in case people think it's semantics, is that if you don't publish in a peer review, you don't have to show your methodology, and you're under less obligation with what information you share. So when you publish a book on Amazon, you can write any damn thing you want. If you publish in a peer-reviewed journal, you've got to follow certain rules, and other people will obviously scrutinize that a lot more closely than they do in a book. And so there's a big difference there.
Okay, now I can look for it. It's in one of my videos.
Yeah, that would be useful, because I'm happy to add that. If in fact there is something peer-reviewed, and what do the peer review people say, then that will certainly be interesting. So that was the one thing, because Saracen was asking. And just by the way, because there was again, this claim about. So one of the things was he pressed me on giving a naturalistic explanation for this innate claim, which I didn't believe in. And eventually he kept asking that, even though so I sort of said the God of the gaps, which obviously he wasn't happy with. But I'm quoting here now: contemporary naturalistic explanations of religious belief come in three types: cognitive explanations, evolutionary explanations, and co-evolutionary explanations. And I've got one here that'll come up in my video as well, about a naturalistic explanation for religious belief. And so, I will include that as well. So that was the first sort of biggest thing, is this whole innate claim thing. And then there was the claim about, well, religion is growing, and so that obviously means in some way there's an inference there that either it's innate or that it must be true because so many people believe it. And when I pointed out, the ad populum fallacy, and I've gone through this very carefully. He quickly changed and didn't acknowledge that he'd made a fallacy, and then he quickly changed the conversation. So I've gone and, these are the things that are very easily missed in like a split second if you're not paying attention. So now I've got my Inspector Clouseau hat on, and I'm going through it literally, sentence by sentence. And it does say here, by the way, that Islam will be the largest religion by 2070. But then it gives the reasons. And the reasons are, of course, very interesting to look at. Nobody can deny whatever the facts will be if in fact that's the case. But there's fertility rates, the fact that Islam has a younger follower base, Christianity is likely to suffer more converts that leave it. So there are various reasons. What Pew definitely does not say is that people are joining Islam because it's actually true. That's the biggest claim that isn't substantiated by any of this data. All it's saying is there's various reasons, and I think most of us can understand that fertility, birth rates, etc., is probably the biggest reason, because Muslims generally have a lot more children per family than non-Muslims, or even Christians for that matter, particularly in Western civilization. So that was, the whole thing was, in the beginning, was about the whole thing of it's innate, and here's the various supposed reasons, and now I need to give an explanation for something that I don't believe in.
Okay, I found it. Petrovic mentions in her article in the Croatian journal Psihologia that there's a possibility that, and seems to have, and could be inferred, and blah 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 blah, and that's it. I'll put that.
Is it peer reviewed, or is it just like a journal entry? Because there is
it's a psychology. It's a psychological journal, peer review journal.
Okay, just send us the link if you would. That'll be awesome. Yeah, I'll have a look at that. The other thing was about the scientific method. Now, it is true that the Arab scientist Ibn al-Haytham used experimentation. He wasn't the first person to come up with something called the scientific method, but he was somebody that combined observations, experiments, and rational arguments to support his intromission theory of vision, in which rays of light are emitted from objects rather than from our eyes. So it is true to say that he fine-tuned or added to the scientific method, but the first one was way back in, it seems to be here, 1600 BCE, where there was experimentation, diagnosis, treatment, prognosis, etc., in an empirical method, 600 BC. But even if this Arab physicist was the first guy that came, even if he was nobody in the world to come up with a scientific method, he was the first one that did it. So what? What does that prove? It proves that an Arab put aside the Qur'an and used his critical faculties to try and look at something in the world.
It's gone. It's gone. It's been deleted.
What, that article?
Yes. But I've got it. I mean, I've got all the screenshots. It's in a video called "Is Hamza Sources a Liar?"
Just send me the link in the private chat. That will be useful.
It's gone. I don't believe it. Yes.
Yeah. So that's. Yeah, so they, well, and the book has been pushed back because she was going to be writing a book, etc. So I think we can definitely say that nothing's been out there in peer review that I've seen, or that has been out to wide peer review that we can go, yep, you know what? But I'm okay, even if that was the case. What does that show? It just shows to me that shows that children just don't understand the natural world around them, and they're likely to look for, you know, something around them that does that. Is there a survival mechanism there? Quite probably. AC Grayling took Justin Barrett to task over this as well, particularly on the sort of questions that he asked, and claimed that Barrett had ignored the second stage of cognitive development. So you can see I've done a bit of research on this. This is still early part of the video. So there's a lot of criticism of this.
I mean, Grayling's comment is magic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sheer gold.
Then the other big thing, because what Subboor seems to do is go to Speaker's Corner and try and turn the topic around to evolution, because he has done some research on that in his own way, whatever that is. And so he can throw out some terminology and quote a few people. And so the topic will obviously get around to evolution. And so clearly it got around to evolution in our discussion. And he threw out, and I've gone and looked up all of these terms. So you can see I'm going through every single thing that he said with a fine-tooth comb. And his claim was that no, natural selection with random mutation is not what everybody would understand by evolution. And I would like to ask anybody who's honest in this chat or anywhere else in the world who is not an evolutionary biologist, if they can put forward any other definition that would fit the modern theory of evolution without looking anything up. I challenge anybody in the chat here or who's watching this, whether anybody else knows anything. So the intention is to say, hey, here's all these other quote unquote competing theories, or let's just call it competing hypotheses. Therefore, let's not confuse things. No, let's keep it, because I challenged him on Darwinism, because he keeps using the word Darwinism. I just said use the modern theory of evolution. No, we can't use the modern theory because this one, and this one, these are competing, and so it will be confusing. And so,
but he doesn't understand it. He does not understand evolution. This is the problem. This is the thing that Aaron Ra also said. Listen, you do not understand evolution, so why are you here talking to me about it? It's unfortunate, but that's the way that it is.
Yeah, so there's the debate. For anybody who hasn't seen it, there's a debate which I think Pull-Ups has put on, or somebody's put into the chat there, with where you can see Subboor arguing with Aaron Ra on evolution. And I always get to the point where it seems to me that when a theist claims that science is not absolute, I think that's the point where, you know, their back is against the ropes. There's nothing else they can say. And so for them, because science isn't quote unquote absolute or certain, that leaves open the door for doubt in science in terms of a certainty. But then again, when asked, well, what can you know for certain? Then, you know, most people are very quiet. They want to claim the Quran. They really want to claim the Quran, but they can't really do that if they are a serious person. Only people who don't really think very deeply will go, yeah, I can know the Quran for certain. Well, of course, anybody that's done like even the first 5 seconds of study in philosophy, which I've just done that amount, knows you can't make that claim. So smart people can't claim that. They really want to claim that, but you know, they can't do that and intellectually be honest. So all that can be done is like the Christians, basically pick holes in evolution, but they don't have a competing theory. They don't have anything. Give me some evidence that points towards your God that we can ascertain and falsify, like evolution. Now you're on the same playing field. You know,
Exactly.
the Christians have tried intelligent design.
Tell them, okay, it's out the window. Let's forget about evolution. It doesn't exist. It's totally wrong. Now what? Are you going to come with your clay and your blood clot?
Well, exactly. Rob, can you ask him what alternative Subboor is providing instead of evolution? Yes, I would do that. There is a video out, actually. Let me give you that. I'm just full of information here, and there's tons more coming. I will give you a video here now where Subboor was speaking to, sounds like an Australian fella, who seemed to have a little bit more knowledge on that. And you will actually see, here's the video. I'll give this to you. You will actually see in this video him attempting to explain his view on how we came about. So, and of course, it starts with as a Muslim. If you start the words as a Muslim, that already is problematic. I don't say, oh, as an atheist. I go, here's the thing. I don't say as a Chinese, as a Rastafarian or whatever the case is. That's like a qualifier. We don't need qualifiers. We just need to know what you believe and why. So there you go. Stops, pull up, grab that video. There you get him to talk a little bit about it. So all that can be done is to quote the Quran. And the other option is to try and pick holes in evolution. And that's all that can be done, because what other explanation is there? I want to bring it up here anyway. So here's some of the things that were thrown out. Evolution by natural genetic engineering. So now, of course, when you go look this up, it doesn't say evolution by natural genetic engineering. It just says natural genetic engineering, NGE, is a class of process provided by molecular biologist James Shapiro to account for the novelty created in the course of biological evolution. However, the theory crosses the line into teleology. And for those who don't know what teleology is, it's a line exemplified and says it resembles several creationist arguments to the effect that observed biology cannot be explained by a creation of random mutation and natural selection. So the problem with that particular one is that he's crossing over and going, hey, you know, something in my theory here looks like it's designed in the sense of like an intelligent designer. And so, of course, there's a lot of pushback against that.
And as a Volvo driver, I think there's something wrong.
Are you driving Volvo?
Well, I have to come up with something.
Okay. Then there's neo-Lamarckian evolution. There's neo-mutationism. There's evolution by self-organization. And all of these are just other hypotheses here, you know, which if you're an evolutionary biologist, you might take seriously. For me, I'm not going to take them seriously until they become, you know, a competing theory. Because obviously I haven't got the time to go into evolutionary biology in deep. So I'm going to trust the best available evidence that the majority of evolutionary biologists, paleontologists, geologists, etc., accept as the best model for how we came about.
Yeah, but Rob, the point is you can, if you want to verify or falsify it, if you want.
Yes, I'm sure you can. It could be, though, that some of them are much more difficult. So if we use the example of this natural genetic engineering, so if the claim there is that there's a teleological component, i.e. some kind of design component, how do you falsify that? Now, again, I'm sure that there's people that are experts that can do exactly that. And this person, Larry Moran, did that.
Rob, the point is, if you are so inclined, you can. Whereas with the God claims, there's no way.
Oh, yes, I see what you mean. Yeah. But I think the challenge is throwing out all these other hypotheses, make somebody sound smart, but they're not serious challenges to natural selection through random mutation. So to put them under the heading of evolution or modern theory of evolution or the modern synthesis of evolution, I don't think is an accurate representation. I don't hear of anybody doing that. So again, these are cast out here to throw doubt on evolution, but you know, experts in the field are not in doubt. I'm reading the book that I quoted in the video, Why Evolution is True by Jerry Coyne, who is an evolutionary biologist. So is P.Z. Myers, obviously Dawkins, etc., etc. And the other one, Human Evolution by Dr. Alice Roberts. So I'm slowly going through those two books, and so those are the sort of people that, you know, Subboor and others who want to challenge evolution should have that conversation with, because none of us here, well, maybe there are, I don't know, maybe it stops. You are certainly more knowledgeable than I am, but I think most people, even most atheists, are not experts in evolution. And so I think one of the big things for me is that the whole intention of this conversation was not an open debate. This was there to try and make me look foolish, to ask questions about a subject that I don't have expertise in. I could have brought Phil along and done the same thing to him with cosmology, and then started to gloat, well, you don't know anything about cosmology. You know, for me, that's not an honest way you have a conversation.
Yeah.
Anyway, I will, as I say, have plenty more to say on this.
Can we talk a little bit about logics, or what's the time? Okay, we have 10 minutes. Because I am at the moment fascinated by the approach of using sheer, like just brutal logics, by just going and saying, okay, because I tried that with Saracen last week and it failed spectacularly, but I still like the concept, because I think if you go and you ask a Muslim, do you think that slavery is good or bad and belongs in the 21st century. Well, if the Quran were to include slavery, would it then belong into the 21st century? This is logical, okay? And the same thing is if you use any kind of logical, rational approach, is that an approach that you can take apart from the factual one using the Quran or the philosophical one, just using brutal facts? Is that an approach that is viable?
Sorry, I missed part of that. Just sum that up again. Sorry, I was...
Well, you have the philosophical approach, okay, where you say, all right, here's what we think of this. This is not what we consider. I mean, we don't consider a 54-year-old man having sex with a 9-year-old girl to be something that belongs in today's society. So this is a philosophical approach, how you look at a young age and you look at the differences in age. Is that something that we should, from a philosophical point of view, should entertain, or is this something that we should outlaw and ban outright? Then you have the factual approach where you say, all right, it is wrong because it says that and that in the Quran, this does not belong. Now, the third option that I see is the logical approach, where you go and you say, well, if, for example, slavery does not belong into today's society in Europe, then if the Quran were to contain slavery, would the Quran then be acceptable or be admissible for society in the 21st century in Europe, which is plain logical. So I see this as an approach, a possible approach, and I'm thinking, is that a viable approach, yes or not? Should we go and rather concentrate on the philosophy, or is that an alternative?
I definitely think it's an alternative. I'm just not sure how strong most people are in having that sort of a conversation. And from the experience I've had, they don't see slavery, or they claim not to see slavery the same way that we do. And so...
okay, no. This is the whole point. Because I saw Sarah do this. Because he said, well, if God is the only thing that is outside our universe, then obviously the only thing out of our universe which will then go and create a universe means that God created the universe out of itself. So we are part of God being part of the universe. So
yes, I think he got that from me.
Always,
he's used, maybe not, but I sort of talked about that some time back, and I brought that up with Ahmad, etc. But that to me is completely coherent. If there is a God, the only place we could have come from is God's essence. There is nowhere else. So with that sort of argument, I agree. Now, on the slavery one, I'm not sure that you've got such a kind of a deductive argument in that sense. Maybe you could lay one out.
Approaches which are based on sheer logics, but I'm not sure that they are viable, and I'm not sure that they are actually an alternative, because, as you say, most Muslims are not able to follow them because they are not rational and not people who can understand concept, because they were taught to obey and not to think.
It's a bit harsh on all Muslims. I don't think they're all like that. I'm sure.
No. This is the way they're brought up. Remember, I went to school in Iran, and this is exactly what happens. And this is what was lamented by so many Iranians, that they were being brought up to obey and not to think. And this was the shortfall of the Iranian universities, because a lot of people had to relearn how to think.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, so but again, is that something that we can extrapolate across the entire Muslim world? When I say the Muslim world, every Muslim. But I agree, there's probably a vast majority that are, that's the way that they are brought up, as you say. But I wouldn't say that all Muslims are brought up that way.
Yeah, but should we be thinking more about logics? Because Muslims say that everybody is born a Muslim. Yeah, but then if you apply logics, that would mean that 80% of the human population has left Islam. Because it's no good.
Or deny it or something. What they really claim, and again, I want to see where the jump is, apart from just a claim from the book. So let's assume there was some kind of innate ability that we had some version of some God. Again, that's so wispy and so, not metaphorical, but gaseous in a sense. But now you've got to go from there, if that was the case, because you have to understand what sort of God it is. But now how do you get to, specifically the Islamic God without looking at the Quran? Because if you look at the Quran, that's just the claim. We need to obviously establish it, separately from the Quran. So how do you do that?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Because I was going from street epistemology and going one step further and saying, well, let me not ask the questions, the Socrates questions, but simply go one step further and then apply the logics behind the street epistemology. And I was wondering about that. Okay, so I need to develop this a bit more before I go into
I
this.
think there is people who are intellectually honest, they go with a logical conclusion, or at least what they conceive to be the logical conclusion. But there are some other guys that logic thinking is not really their thing.
No.
Yeah, but logic itself is it's not an easy thing. I mean, we kind of go into it, but once you start to look into philosophy, my goodness, it's not something you're born with. It's 2,000 years of building one, standing on the shoulders of giants, going from Pascal and all the way back, to Aristotle and Plato, etc. But this doesn't seem to me to be our innate, not the deep philosophical, the basic thing.
No, it's absolutely not. It's really hard, and it's really really hard to find foundations in it. It's like you
But here's
dig
the
into like Bertrand Russell's works and Kurt Gödel, and it's even hard to find foundations for it.
And I think stops on your point. If you could come up with a syllogism for the slavery, so premises and a conclusion, and then walk them through the premises to get to the conclusion. If they agree with the premises, and you don't have to tell them the whole thing up front, one premise after another, and they agree with those, and it's a logically valid argument, then now you've got a point. Now they get to the conclusion and there's no escape. Because if you've agreed with the premises, then you are led to the conclusion. So that, I think for you, if you could come up with something like the Kalam argument, which is logically valid, not sound. There's the difference between sound and validity. But if you can come up with a valid argument, and then you get people to you test them on each one of the premises. Hey, do you believe this? If not, why not? Etc. Through each of the premises, and if you get to the end, then the conclusion follows naturally. That would be a great way to do it.
That's a very good point, I think. Yeah. I need to collect a couple of those.
I mean, look at it online, because there's obviously a lot smarter, people than us. I tried that with Muhammad, and I was even prepared to make changes to the premises, because it didn't bother me that however way you kind of fiddle the premises, I could still get to the conclusion. But of course, he threw in all kinds of red herrings, etc. So, basically,
yeah, but he has that. I mean, that's his only option. If you ask a Muslim, is your God all powerful? In other words, can he do everything? You will immediately, emotionally say yes. But then, as soon as you ask, well, does that mean he can create something indestructible? They realize, oops, they're going to catch 22. They can't win. Then all of a sudden, you get the apologetics come in, and then there's all sorts of things happening. And then it's the red herrings time. Yeah.
I think there's obviously a pervasive assumption, and it happened with my conversation with Subboor, that because we can't answer something, either we're stupid, we are sheep, we are something or other, and it leaves the door open in their mind. I'm just doing a psychological, attempted, in inverted commas, psychological evaluation. It leaves open in their mind the possibility of the God. But when you say God of the gaps, that's like a swear word. Don't you say God of the gaps, because which is what it really is. But don't say that, because they obviously know what that means. Some of them anyway. And of course, that's like, we can't have that. So we'll do anything to get around that. So we'll pick holes in your naturalistic explanation, or point out you don't have one. The fact that I don't have one doesn't mean that you can insert yours in the space provided. It means that you need to demonstrate. So the whole thing,
exactly.
Going back to what Saracen and Raki, who's now left, is even if we don't have an explanation, even if I had no explanation for the basis of reason, which in fact I will provide something, and again, not claiming it's absolute, you need to give me yours, and you need to demonstrate it. Now, when he talked about the full beans, I'm going to give you the full beans. If you go and listen to the part where he says, I'm going to give you the full beans now, what he did is basically read off what's in Tortz's book, that chapter that we went through in the show here, and all it does is make an assertion. And
Tortz's wrote a book?
Yeah, it's called the divine reality, I think. Some Muslims, including Marshall and others, have bought this. So it's getting around to people, unfortunately. But there you go.
This is like this book that they published, which was part of this IERA group.
Yes. So it's part of that. So he's published this book, but let's, and we can laugh at it, and that's fine. But we need to examine.
All you can do.
We need to examine the claim, and of course, so it's pick holes and show that the atheist cannot account for reason. Torta says rationality, and they are different. I looked that up because again, there was a very small part there where Subboor says, "Oh, you think reason and rationality are different?" And I was trying to make a point. And I said, just hold on a moment. We never went back to that. And of course, they are different. Otherwise, they'd be the same word. And they do say they've got a different definition. But putting that aside, even if we didn't have an account, and of course, Subboor made a very strong statement. It's impossible for naturalistic explanation to provide, a foundation or an origin for reason. It's impossible. Now, that claim needs a huge amount of justification. And of course, that wasn't forthcoming.
The Qur'an. Allah never came.
But separate from that, to make the case that it's impossible for anything, now you've got a tremendous burden on your shoulder to show that it's impossible. And of course, there was confusion every now and again with atheism and naturalism, because an atheist can be a naturalist, but an atheist can be an idealist. An atheist can be something else. They're not automatically a naturalist. So again, it's useful to ask the question and make sure that you address the correct thing, which is, naturalists believe in the natural. Idealism is a different story. But even but then they're inserting their version there. And again, if you're a listener and you don't know a lot about this, it sounds perfectly reasonable. If you're a Muslim and you believe in God, and now you hear, but God is the origin of reason, and He gave us reason, you go, of course that makes sense. Now the rest of us who are listening to this are going, you just made an assertion. I could say exactly the same thing. I could say the quantum whisperer that created this universe from the quantum vacuum provided us with rationality. I've done exactly the same thing. I've not demonstrated. All I've done is make an assertion that this God did this. Now what you need to do is show that the supernatural being exists. But even if He existed, now you've still got to show, how does He provide that rationality? What is the mechanism? How do we test that? If you're just going to assert it, that's fine. And I think that's part of the problem that I notice is it sounds reasonable to people who already believe, because they don't want to think deeply on these things. And so they go, oh, well, that makes sense because I already believe it. I mean, that's so self-evident. So
well, there's one point which I made with the Kalam, and that is all these arguments are not there to create any kind of belief. They are there to reinforce an already existing one. It doesn't matter which one it is.
Yeah, but that's what apologetics is, isn't it? Apologetics is essentially to find reasons or explanations for how you can use. So as I've pointed out many times, the methodology, as Karl Popper pointed out, is exactly the opposite of science. So we have a conclusion that we're now going to look at and find things that match our conclusion in the past, where science goes, hey, here we've got some hypothesis, let's go out in the future and test it and make predictions and see if we can falsify it. Religion does exactly the opposite of that. And so the methodology are polar opposites of each other. And obviously the first conclusion, rightly so, is that one is nowhere near as profound or as useful or as accurate as the other one. But what I'm going to focus on for sure is this, accounting for rationality, because all that's doing is trying to shut the atheist up and go, hey, you haven't got a foundation, therefore anything else you say, it's kind of like a presuppositionist argument. It's disguised. It's like a disguised version of a presuppositionist argument, because some of us can see the presup argument coming from a mile away. So this is a disguised version. Well, if you can't account for rationality, then everything else that science has done, according to my interlocutor, we can't talk about that, because if you haven't got an origin of rationality, reason, even though you're using it, then you can't talk about anything else.
Yeah, but have you noticed they never give you a reason for their God's existence. They only give you a reason for their belief as an existence. So they always think that as soon as they have found a way to show you that the belief in a God is rational or is justified or something, they've already done the job, which is not true.
Well, absolutely. And it scales with the nature of the claim, as I'm speaking to the converted here. I mean, you're the expert at this. It scales with the nature of the claim. that, you know, the more extraordinary the claim, the better the evidence and reasons need to be. If I tell you I've got a dog at home, you're probably likely to believe me. If I tell you I've got my flying dragon at home that's invisible in the backyard, now that's an extraordinary claim. Now you're not going to just go, yeah, I accept it. And also, just to add on top of that, there's also the outcome of the claim as well. So if the claim is a you know, bit more of an extraordinary claim, but there's no consequences in believing it, you know, then, you know, you perhaps slightly more justified. But if the claim is something where the consequences, like believing that somebody has found the cure to AIDS, then that's got profound consequences to it, as opposed to believing that, you know, somebody split the moon in two. Well, you know, okay, it's a bit of a exponential claim, but it doesn't affect our world in any way. So there's a lot more to this sort of thing.
There's no such thing as evidence, better evidence, good evidence, bad evidence. Evidence is evidence. Didn't you know?
Yeah, I guess what I mean is when I say extraordinary evidence, more evidence.
This is the whole point.
You know, they add on, you know, like evolution seems to have, which has got, you know, multiple lines from all kinds of different spheres. It's not just one person, not just looking at fossils, for example. So there's
okay. I need to go and do some homework. I need to find some more logical approaches, because I like this idea, but I like your approach in you know, creating an envelope for it.
But I think also the trick is to make them talk to think in this logical way, because the trick is to trick them into being logical.
Yeah, but this is exactly the envelope that Rob has created. This is exactly my point. This is why it's so nice to be able to talk to you guys about this, because, you know, we are thinking along the same lines. But if like what I brought up, then your guys and your input and things like that will sort of focus this to make it sharper, and then come up with a solution, and then come up with with something that is worth following up. This is why I enjoy this so much.
Yeah, and I think stops for yourself as well. There's perhaps a few questions even before you get to the syllogism, you know, just to establish these, because what you want to do is have a conversation where somebody walks down a path that they agree with. I don't mind anybody doing that to me. If I agree with a path and I get to the end, I go, well, I've agreed with all of that, you know, under careful consideration, and that's the deductive outcome, you know, then I'm in a position where I have to agree with it. And so, for example, you know, it's a silly question, and I don't ask it often unless I can see somebody might be playing around. But is truth important to you? So if you have a conversation,
exactly. This is where Abu is so brilliant, because Abu has all the facts and he leads you. He's much better than me diplomatically in taking him by the hand, and then, you know, taking the facts and saying, okay, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. And they go and they have to agree before they realize, whoops, where am I?
And again, I think this will only work for people who are not, for want of a better word, deeply ingrained. That they actually want to have that conversation, because, you know, it's very unlikely you're going to move somebody in a single conversation. But if you can have them go and think about it, so the biggest benefit out of this conversation with Subboor is I've gone away now and really focused on every single thing, and I will be over the next week or two if it takes me that long. However long, really gone to focus on these claims now. Because as one of the things I'll be putting up, which I'm sort of preempt now, is, you know, I want to know what's true. And if there's one of Subboor's claims that is true, then I want to know about that, even if it's unpleasant or unwelcome or whatever the case is. So now this whole conversation has sort of honed me and focused me, but like, you know, what you were saying for yours, to go and look at these claims, because they're not going to go away, and it's no use just laughing them off. That wasn't my intention anyway. And if I know something, or if I can find out information, then I'm going to do that. If I don't know something, then, you know, I'm going to say I don't know. So,
and it's important that onlookers, the others, start thinking, hey, what's he on about? Maybe he's got a point. Let me start thinking about it. And that, I think, is where it happens, the onlookers, not the guy themselves. I mean, you're not going to move him, but the others.
No, absolutely right. It's people who are viewing, who've got a bit of an open mind, who want to hear something, that go away and go, you know what, I'm going to go and look into X and Y. And typically, of course, as YouTube, which is not the place, that's sort of more bottom feeding in YouTube as it happens to be, the people making comments there are not people who want to think, generally speaking. And there's a few exceptions, obviously, but generally speaking, when I see some comments there, it's more sort of schoolyard mentality, which is fine. Everybody's to their own. And those are not really the people that you want to interact with or have any hope of having a an intellectual conversation with. So it's really the people that and I know you guys are pretty hard on Cyrus, but I think one can have a conversation, regardless of whether you agree with his views or you think he's trying to do X, Y, and Z. I think you can have a conversation backwards and forwards in some way, better than most other people. Now, when I say other people, other Muslims that I've come across. That's not to say it's perfect, etc., but none of us are. But that's more the sort of person that I would want to have that conversation with. They go, do you know what, you made a point, I'll go think about that. That's all. Go and think about something. And I actually said it. There's a gentleman that I was speaking to that just before Subboor and Hamza walked up to me. So I caught them out of the corner of my eye walking across, and they sort of came straight over to me. So obviously they had that conversation, or he wanted to have his conversation with me. But there's another Muslim gentleman said, "Oh, Rob, I've seen you around. You're a YouTube star." And I'm like, "No, I just appear occasionally on YouTube videos." And he said, "Oh, it's my first time." And I said, "Oh, welcome to Speaker's Corner." And we had a bit of a chat, and I asked him a couple of questions. I said, "Hey, go and think about that. I'm not here to..." And actually, isn't it interesting? Just before that conversation, I said to him, I didn't even see, the other guys weren't at that spot yet. I said to him, "I'm not here to catch you out or anything. I'm here to have a conversation, and it'd be good if you go away and think about it. Come back with some kind of answer, etc." That's my point, is for people to go away and think about things, not to quite beat them down or to win or whatever the case is. So that's the sort of intention. That's the sort of person, hopefully, stops that you could engage with that person and goes, "Oh, do you know what? I'm going to go away and think about that." For me, it's like brilliant. That's what I would like every single person that I had an interaction with, go away, "Do you know what? You made a point there." Whatever the point is for them, I'm going to go away and think about that research or whatever. Come back with a better version. Say, "Hey, Rob, do you know what? I don't agree with you because X, Y, and Z." Now there's been progress. Say again?
I said, okay, try that with Shabir.
Shabir Yusuf, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's just, that's not going to happen. But, and I'm a bit more careful to not generalize it to every Muslim, a couple of interactions. Because there are other people out there, yes, that we're all wedded to beliefs or whatever the case is, but there are people out there with whom you can have, let's say, a better conversation, even if it's not perfect, whatever the case is, but have a better one. And so those are the people, ideally, that I want to have the conversation with. So come back with a syllogism, stops, or send me something on Skype, and we'll have a look at that. Because if you can walk them down, and you've got a few foundational questions that they agree with, is truth important to you? What would happen if you were to come to belief that, in fact, and make it a simple thing. So what if you believed, if you thought nobody could fly, and what if we could demonstrate to you that a human being could actually fly? Would you now believe that human beings can fly? So completely separate to whatever you're going to ask them, because if you take them down the route ahead of time, some people start to think ahead of time. So, ask some kind of a question that gets them, yes, I'm a rational person. If you could demonstrate to me through a like a knockdown argument that something's true, then I would be forced to believe it, even if I didn't like the consequences of the idea. Like the Kalam. If the Kalam was sound, we would all have to say the universe had a cause. We would no longer be talking about there could be an internal universe, it could have created itself, whatever the case may be. We would all be going, okay, so what's the cause of the universe? We're not there yet. It could be that that's true, but that would be the logical outcome of the Kalam argument. And as a side note, by the way, I went with Phil and interviewed a couple more scientists. So there's a model out there that says the universe can create itself. Now, when you say that, most people's logic or basic logic goes, no, that's not possible. And particularly my lovely friend, Ali Dawa, go, no, that's not possible. Something can't create itself. Zero can never become one. And so, of course, shift over to maths.
I've done that with Hamza sources too, because he asked this question. I brought so many examples of how it's possible.
Yes, and I sat down, I listened to a guy called Richard Gott. It's called the Gott theory. And his model it's like a time loop at the bottom. So he showed the model. He has all these pictures. Phil's going to have it up in a wonderful video. You know, we've done a couple of interviews together with multiple cameras. I'm just listening because, you know, some of this stuff is a bit above my expertise. But Phil and he is having this great conversation. I'm like, here's two cosmologists having a conversation. And he's talking about how this is possible. So somebody says to me, well, how on earth can it, you know, how can this model come about that the universe can create itself? All I can really say is that there's a time loop, and it's like a loop. So he showed this picture, and through this, it creates itself. Now, I can't give an in-depth explanation, and I don't even know that it's true, but there are other models out there, you know. So anybody claiming, oh, it can't do this, it can't do that, well, we don't know that it can't do that. Your logic, which, you know, is questionable at best, doesn't apply to the very small, like the quantum world, or the very big, you know, at universe sizes. So our logic, for want of a better word in inverted commas, is really tuned to, you know, our environment, which is the size that we're at. So not the very small and the very big. So we've got to be a bit cautious of going, it's impossible. We should still use logic. And I think sometimes that's the confusion that Ali drops into, among other things, is going, hey, you say we shouldn't use logic. No. I'm not saying don't use logic. I'm saying be cautious of attempting to infer your logic on the very big and the very small, because they can do things that you would consider illogical in the normal world. But it's possible, and, you know, there's some data and mathematical computations that show X and Y is possible, given certain assumptions, which are not supernatural assumptions. So if this happens, then this is possible. That, you know, so that, and then you go, well, how's that possible? You know, so we just got to be cautious. It's not that we can't use our rationality. It's just that we've got to be cautious to infer our rationality to everything. Nobody would have thought that a particle can be two places at one time, and quantum mechanics shows us that's possible. So, you know, we've got to be cautious with the big and the small.
Well, it's showing that the absurdity of common sense.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so we've got to use it, and it's a useful tool, but it's not an absolute thing. And, you know, this universe is a mysterious place, and, you know, that's what I've said as well. The best minds in the world are telling us they don't know the answer, and they're putting out predictions. So who on earth or why should we trust anybody else who's got next to no knowledge in the subject? Why would you do that? You know, would you trust the man in the street to give you a medical prognosis? No, you wouldn't. So why would you trust somebody who's read a 1400-year-old book to give you a prognosis about, you know, the universe, when we've got cosmologists, and when they talk and you see the sums on there, it literally looks like, you know, Einsteinian sums.
It's the typical, I'm a NASA engineer, so I know evolution is wrong.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We've got to be careful not to confuse different areas of expertise. They are very different to each other. So me personally, I'm going to go with the best scientific knowledge that's available. But obviously that's not acceptable for theists.
Yeah, but that's not faith. You see, this is the point. You're not exhibiting faith. And this is what a lot of people are trying to insinuate, that this is the same as religion, which makes religion look awfully bad. If they say, well, it's only faith that you believe all this, well, I mean, then why do you believe religion if it's only faith?
Yeah, so, you know, if you're going to claim you know, faith is not a good thing, then, you know, you shouldn't use it yourself. You know, my definition of faith is believing without good reasons or evidence. Otherwise, you would just call it I believe. If you have to say the word I have faith, that's like a qualifier for, well, I believe something, but I haven't got any reasons for it, or I haven't got good reasons or evidence.
Or the opposite, yeah.
Yes, Fee, you're absolutely right. I was on the back foot, and you live and learn. I've only been doing it for a year. And normally I have reasonable conversations, but you're right. I allowed Subboor to dominate the conversation, asked question after question, and refused to answer mine. And as I look through it as well, you can see when I'm talking, when he's talking. It's a rough estimate at the moment because I haven't got to the end of the video, but I would say at least 70% of the time it's him talking, interrupting, etc. And so this wasn't a polite conversation where both people could put views and could answer questions. So all of this will come out, of course, as well. So yes, it's a case of, I think in this particular case, it's a case of you know, the theist pointing towards us and going, hey, you guys don't have, quote, an absolute answer. and that makes us feel comfortable that we can give a supernatural answer without any good reasons or evidence. Because I'm still interested in what scientific proof or evidence is there for a God. The best they can do, from what I can see, is a philosophical argument, and even that's obviously not convincing, but that's the point that we're at.
I want to see this video. Was it the usual like name dropping and quote mining?
Oh yeah, a lot. And that's something that he objected to when I claimed that Essence of Thought had refuted the innate fitra claim. Oh, it's again, the words are there. I've actually written it down, but it's along the lines of, oh, you know, we're here in Speaker's Corner. It's easier for you to throw out authority and say this was refuted. And then, of course, what carries on from there is to try and quote authorities. But again, they cherry-picked authorities that may or may not agree with what his position is. Again, you can't go and check it, but I will.
But I killed that on the Dawa Response channel.
Oh, did you? Okay. Okay, that's good. I haven't seen that yet.
I don't know why people don't look at that. I mean, this is the biggest failure. I think that they make a claim and then they're too lazy to go and try and falsify it themselves. They don't go and use Google to say, okay, enter now the innate claim and then enter with it refuted or debunked or something like that.
Yes, that's right. Pull-Ups is asking, Rob, when you make a response video, will you dumb it down to make it easier to understand for the sheepy Dawa fans? Nicely asked, Pulls. So I'm going to keep it simple because I'm not I'm not somebody that wants to needlessly complicate things. And some of the explanations from other people or some of the quotes might be slightly more technical, but it's not like we're not talking cosmology here. This is, anybody that has a reasonable grasp of English and a reasonable understanding of the world will be able to understand everything that's going on. So it's mostly a case of me investigating these claims and going, okay, is any of these claims true? And also pointing out where there were in fact fallacies and other things that didn't conduce to an honest and open conversation. Had it been that sort of thing, different story. But that wasn't the case. And I noticed in other videos of Subboor that's also not the case. So throw out, this particular atheist philosopher of religion, evolutionary guy, or the editor of Nature says this or that. So what? Throwing out a few claims. Again, it's for the uninitiated. Wow, this guy sounds like he's clued up because he's thrown out a few names and he said something they may or may not have said. Well, I mean, that just stops the argument in its tracks, doesn't it? As soon as somebody potentially that has authority says something, well, we've got to trust that. Of course, and it's the ones that agree with your position. So I think that's question begging to start with. So yes, the answer is Pull-Ups. I will make it as easy to understand, and I will be taking quotes from, all over, wherever I can find the research. And if I've, there's plenty of things that I said that I could have said differently. I'll point out a few of the mistakes I made. And if there's something that he said is correct, then I will point that as well. So this is not about going, hey, he didn't say anything correct necessarily, but we've got to look very carefully at what was said. So, and what part of it is correct and what isn't, because you can say one sentence correct and 5 sentences that are wrong. Well, what does one do then? So we've got to unpick this. So that's why it's such a time-consuming thing. But I do think by the end, it'll certainly give me more knowledge and hopefully share it with everybody else. So a lot of my time will be taken up doing this. And Stops and other people would have done similar things, but because the conversation was so long, there's a lot of topics thrown in there, and so I'll be doing a lot more on it. So, of course, when I do go back to Speaker's Corner, and inevitably I'll have some people coming up and making sort of statements, then I'll hopefully be in a reasonable position to have a conversation with those people if they want to, or they're just going to be hecklers. So we shall see.
The new approach is just say, I don't know, you tell me.
Yes, well, it depends on what it is. I'm quite happy to answer questions about my worldview if I have an answer.
I don't have a worldview.
Say again?
I don't have a worldview.
Oh, you don't have a worldview. Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Well, I believe certain things, and if you add up,
That's
the totality of the things I believe.
You believe certain things about certain things. I mean, certain topics you are associating with certain things, but there is no one worldview that you approach everything with, which is a worldview.
Okay, so that's a difference of, I guess, what each of us means by worldview. I just think of worldview as the label that I would use to encompass what I believe, and even though we are atheists, that's just one small part. That part I absolutely agree with. It's one small claim about one particular topic. That's all. You could be an idealist. I could be a naturalist. You You could be a
Democrat or Republican or liberalist, whatever.
It's just a single claim about a single
Exactly.
topic.
It's one facet.
But for me, worldview, when I hear the word worldview, for me personally, it just represents the totality of my views. But what a good interlocutor will do is go, hey, Rob, what do you believe about X, Y, and Z? Are you a naturalist? Are you this? Well, I don't know what X and Y means. Can you explain that? Because, I'm not going to know every single term out there. Oh, it means X, Y, and Z. Is that something that you agree with? Yeah, that sounds reasonable, or whatever the case is. So uncover, what do I believe? Now you can speak to me. Because when you say all atheists are sheep and stuff, that's just disingenuous nonsense. And it's not an honest conversation. So obviously you want to understand what that person believes rather than straw-manning other beliefs or anybody else, and then understand what do they believe, and have they got reasons? Have they thought about it? Do they know X and Y? It was somebody, I think it was TDS Dave. So if he's on TDS Dave, this is a shout out to you. He made a good analogy. If we were to say to a theist, so what is your explanation for God invoking the use of a banana in the beginning of the universe? What is the theist going to say? Well, let me think about that. How did a banana get used in the beginning of the universe? Do you know what? I'm not sure, but I'm sure somebody thinking about it, immediately they're going to reject that claim, and therefore they don't have to give an account for something that they don't believe in or think is true. It's up to me to show that, in fact, that is a plausible explanation. And then they could still say, well, I don't know how that happened. Totally fine. Generic God versus Allah specifically. Yeah, so obviously one of the things to do is to obviously get people to talk specifically about their God. I guess it depends what questions one needs to ascertain from them to understand their God. Obviously, when I speak to Muslims, I have a general understanding of what their God claims to be, what they claim their God to be. So I don't normally do that. I could, though. I could ask them, so what do you understand by God? And can you describe it or give me some characteristics or attributes or whatever? But I generally know what they're going to say there, so I'm not sure if that's particularly helpful. So yes, I'm assuming when I'm speaking to Muslims that they're going to be talking about an Allah, which is a personal creator of the universe that has sent a specific message by a specific messenger for people of the planet. And he says X, Y, and Z, and he's got certain attributes.
Can I say like this in general? My feeling is that this argument from authority, that the more scientifically enlightened a culture is, the less they care about authorities. Do you think that this is correct?
I guess it depends in what fields. I'm not sure if we could make that a general claim. I think the more knowledge you have, using the Dunning-Kruger, experiment, the more likely you are to credit other people and not take credit yourself and recognize your own shortcomings, etc., etc. So I think the people who are ignorant don't even know what other people have said, so they're less likely to have appeals to authority. So it's people who have read up. But I think the challenge with appeal to authority is I don't really care who says what. It's nice to know, perhaps, but I'm really interested in what they said, and does that stack up? Do I have a way to ascertain whether what they've said is true? If Lawrence Krauss says the universe came from a big bang and a quantum vacuum, I can quote Lawrence Krauss saying that, but that doesn't make it true. It just means that Lawrence Krauss says, is it more likely than a man on the street to be true? Yes, but to what degree more likely? I don't know. So I think that's the thing, is to be careful of. I could name drop something and say, hey, here's what X, Y, and Z said. I want you to look at what they said. Now, I could say X, Y, and Z just to give them credit, possibly. But if it's done in the way that I think it was done with Subboor, which is to throw out a name to sound smart, and to try and back up the argument with a name rather than what they said. Because if he had said to me, hey, some people say X, Y, and Z, I could have said, well, so what if they say X, Y? Other people say something else. But as soon as you throw out a name, somehow it seems to, in our psyche, give that claim more weight, which it shouldn't do, obviously.
No, I realize now that by showing this image by Carl Sagan that I'm kind of using the argument
of you can see it.
I can't see it.
I can't see it. Let me just see if it's showing up. Oh, okay. It's showing up on
Okay.
the yeah, I
Anyway,
can't see.
but by using this Carl Sagan's quote, I'm kind of using the argument from authority. The quote is Carl Sagan saying, "Arguments from authority carry little weight. Authorities have made mistakes in the past. They will do so again in the future. Perhaps a better way to say it is that in science there are no authorities. At most, there are experts." But
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
but this is kind of circular argument because now I'm using Carl Sagan as an authority. But anyway,
No, but you're just quoting something he said, so it didn't matter. It could have been the man on the street who said it.
yeah. Okay. But like in general, when I go like when I go to like the Arab world and I speak with people and I compare that to the kind of speech I hear from like people in the scientific community, like the religious Muslims have way more respect for authority figures, while people in the scientific community are more interested in the evidence itself. You see the difference?
Yes, so definitely, and that's a learned response, isn't it?
So yeah, I think I find this, but this is not only in the Arab world, because this exists within Western societies today. Because this dude said this, and because he has this, look, he has a PhD in his name and so on, then that's an argument. But in the end, the reality don't care whether you have a PhD. Like Carl Sagan, as I'm showing here, Carl Sagan is just an ape. He consists of the same kind of DNA as you and me, pretty much. Like, and he's just a like bag of chemical scum. It's not. He's just an ape. And yes, he's a famous ape, and he was a very intelligent ape. But it's that's the important. What's important is the evidence. I think
absolutely. We examine the claims, not the people who make the claims.
And
but
why they say something based on what?
Yeah.
What's that? Stops?
I said why they say something and what it is based on.
Yes. So we're going to examine, what they said and why, type of thing, rather than who they are. I mean, because we do get sometimes hoodwinked. It's very easy to get hoodwinked. Well, this famous person said this, therefore it carries more weight. Now, it may carry more weight versus the man on the street, potentially. But again, we still need to evaluate, and particularly on, fairly extraordinary claims or important things. We're not just going to take it because Carl Sagan said it or whoever said it. But it's easy to do that, isn't it? It's just, it seems like, it's kind of what you were saying, Abu. It seems like once you've read a few things, you can put out, like I said, A.C. Grayling said X, Y, and Z about, Justin Barrett's innate claims. No pun intended there. The claims about the innate nature of God. So somebody go, well, who cares that it's A.C. Grayling? It's more for me to say that that's the person, so you can go and look it up. Not that, oh, well, it's A.C. Grayling, therefore that must mean it's true.
No, this is what I always ask. Why did somebody say something? We do not know why somebody said something. We cannot ascertain, number one, that he actually did, especially if you're out in a debate or in Speaker's Corner. So you don't know why something was said, based on what, and whether the data that it was based on is actually correct. So you need to go and make a lot of assumptions before you accept it. So you need to go and check a lot of things before you accept what somebody else says.
Absolutely. And Fee's asking a good question there. Guys, is there anyone who knows about evolution like Skydive Phil knows about cosmology or have read about creationist argument against evolution? Well, apart from Aaron Ra, there's probably people all over the place.
Jerry Coyne.
Yes, I mean, famous people, but I think he's talking about somebody that could come down to Speaker's Corner potentially and have that sort of debate with people. Because most of us are not experts in evolution. I'm more interested in cosmology as it happens for me personally. It doesn't mean
the guy in the hat is very knowledgeable.
Which kind of hat?
There's a guy in a hat, in a straw hat, who is running around. I just saw 2 discussions with him with Gay Mohammed, and he brought up some good stuff on evolution.
Oh, okay. If you've got a link, I'll be interested in that, or maybe I'll find it somewhere.
I actually know a professor in molecular biology that is kind of he's sometimes debating, but he's Scandinavian. But maybe you can get him.
Oh, that'll be great. But again, like you said, Abu, most of these guys are professional people. They're not going to come down to Speaker's Corner, or maybe we can get them on the show here. We could have them on the show possibly.
Yeah, but hang on, Rob. If you go to Speaker's Corner frequently, maybe you're going to see this guy, because I've seen a couple of videos with him and by him now, or on him, I should say. The thing is that he's rather, let's say, quiet, and he lets a lot of things slide, which makes Muslims feel that they have the edge over him, which is not actually the case. But then they're not really acute to what he is saying. They don't look at the contents. They look more at the posture, which is rather more laid back and relaxed. And they mistake that for, I don't know, for cowardice or something, that they have made a point over him, which they don't. So if you see a guy walking around Speaker's Corner with a straw hat, go and approach him and ask him. Very nice guy.
Okay. Okay. What nationality is he, or is he?
I have no clue. I'd say British.
British. Okay. Cool. Okay. I mean, if anybody's got any videos on that, that's links that they can put in the chat, I'll go and have a listen to that as well.
I just watched this like 2 seconds ago.
Okay, you'll have it in your history list. You'll have it in your history. So when you click on history, you'll see the video there.
The problem is that I can't remember what browser I was using.
Right. Okay. And you're right there. I think you made the point there. Certain interlocutors at Speaker's Corner will also measure up somebody's approach, and if they're a quieter person, then they'll tend to try and dominate. There was that conversation which I don't know if I did it on the Jinn&Tonic show, but I went through a conversation with Subboor, and this, I think he was kind of German to a degree, and he seemed quite knowledgeable at one stage in Speaker's Corners way back when. And he had some good points, but he was much quieter, and then Subboor was sort of more in the bully mode of interrupting and stuff like that. Whereas, if somebody else starts off like that, then he tends to be more quiet. But if somebody else is quiet, in his case, then he'll tend to dominate. So, and I think, I think that kind of thing happened with our conversation. Well, I allowed Subboor to do that, which, obviously is my mistake. And it's easy, with hindsight to go, oh, you could have done X, Y, and Z. It depends on how you feel on the day, and, a lot of factors that are happening. But as I say, the good thing is I'll be doing a lot of research on this. I still won't be an expert on evolutionary theory by the end of it, but I'll certainly have more knowledge on many of the topics that were discussed, so I can have that conversation again with people in the future.
Okay, here you go. Found it.
Perfect. I will copy that to the main chat as well, so the people who are interested can go watch that. And we'll pull that up and have a look at this guy at some point.
But when it comes to evolution, I mean, if you have time and energy, I mean, all the facts are available. You can just go out on the web, and it's just a matter of how much time you put into it. So you can understand all the mechanism. It's not like...
Absolutely. The information's all out there. You can go and take a class, look it up. I think it's like all of us. We're all time poor. If we were billionaires and time could stand still, well, you could be an expert in anything. But there's various topics, various interests, etc., etc. And so, you've got to pick the things that are most interesting. Otherwise, it becomes a real pain in the bum to kind of look things up. So, it's choosing the topics that are of interest and learning more about them. But I think all of us can realize that there's people that are smarter than us. When the first time I heard Phil speak, I'm going, this guy's a cosmologist. He sounded exactly like it. If he'd said to me, he was part of, Alan Guth's team, I would have gone, yep, yeah, absolutely great. Can I meet Alan Guth?
Yes, there are things that are smarter, but like there are things in nature that are not that difficult. So you don't have to be like super smart. Like there are certain things in physics and mathematics that like you have to have a kind of a high-speed processor, high-speed CPU, so to speak, to understand that. But most things in biology, for example, I mean, I don't think it requires that much. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to figure it out the first time, but once it's figured out, I think most people can learn most things in biology.
I think it's mostly the terms and stuff like that that are given, you know, that becomes a bit more. I mean, if you go and listen to Aaron Ra and that.
Yeah, but terms you can check out what they mean, and I mean
Yes,
the mechanisms in themselves are not
No, the mechanisms
as complicated
are easy to
as.
understand. Quite right. The mechanisms are easy to understand if they're explained in layman's terms. Now, how and why do we know that those are the case? That becomes obviously more complex, and you get into biology, you know, cell physiology, etc., etc. That gets a bit more complicated. That now gets a bit more like cosmology. But the concepts,
No, but I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe okay. Yeah, organic chemistry can be a little bit.
I mean, you probably sounds like you've got some knowledge, Abu, and it sounds. But this is the case, you know, and this is a positive thing for you. So don't take it negatively. You are part of the Dunning-Kruger effect in the sense that when you've got some expertise in a field, you go, oh, this is easy. This is what they found. People who are expert in whatever knowledge they have, they tend to think other people think it should be easy as well. And that's the mistake that people with knowledge have. And the people who are ignorant, who don't know anything, will claim, you know, certainty in things, but people who have knowledge go, oh, you know, everybody should know that. I mean, you know, that's
yeah,
so
but
easy.
I think there are things that are objectively easy. Like, I sometimes compare things to like certain things that many people take to be like, oh, he's like a brain scientist or something, but not all things in brain science are that difficult. Like,
the basics of evolution. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100%.
But even like understanding like the mechanisms of like inside the cell and so on, once you learn it, and yes, it's not more difficult than like plumbing or something. Yes, if you don't know anything about plumbing, yes, maybe it's difficult. But if you just take some time and figure out how the mechanisms work, it's not that complicated.
Abu, you seem to have a little bit of knowledge, certainly more than me potentially. Is that something that you'd want to do? Like a fun
molecular biology.
Well, again, you don't have to go deep.
It's
a show on it.
Nah, then it's better. I mean, there are so many good videos out there.
Okay.
If it's some kind of related to Islam, like the scientific claims or something, then
so here's what you could do. Because the video's out, you can go see it on EF Dawa with me speaking to Subboor. So go watch that video and listen to the arguments that Subboor puts forward, because then you could respond on the show here with some of your own thoughts. So here's a response to an attack on evolution by an Islamist, you know, that sort of a thing. Because now you will hear what is being said, and the other video that I've posted there where he spoke to that Australian guy, and you could, you know, respond with your thoughts just on that, because that is related. Obviously it's an attack, if you like. I don't mean that in a negative way, in the sense that you know, but here's an attack on evolution by, you know, a Muslim, and so that you could frame it that way. Here's what the Muslim said. Here's my response. Here's why I say X, Y, and Z. Because I'm not going to get the time to go in depth into evolution myself. So I'm going to go into the claims and look at some of the things that experts say. But you may well have a lot more that you could say on what was said there and why you think some of it's right, or why you think all of it is bollocks, whatever the case is.
What's the name of the video?
1 second. There's 3 parts that EF Dawa have put up.
I just found it. I just went to EF Dawa. It's Atheism and Irrational Worldview, part 1, 2, 3, Subboor and Rob. And then it's Hamza and Julian as part 3.
Atheism and Irrational Worldview.
So you go to EF Dawa. Do you need a link or something?
Here you go. Here's part 1. As soon as part 1 comes, there you go. And for anybody else who wants to go and watch it, doesn't want to look it up.
I need to watch this. Come on. I'm going to have fun with this.
Yeah, send me some thoughts on Skype. Stops.
Okay.
Happy to add some of your thoughts in as well, because I want to get a multiplicity of views. And if there's anybody on the chat here that has a thought and goes, "Oh wow, I just thought about this," or "I've got an expertise in this part or that part," just reach out and let me know.
Okay, bye. We finished. I want to watch the video.
I have a hadith for the day.
Oh, of course. Oh, Jesus, I found one. Go and eat with your right hand with the 3 fingers and then lick them. Why? Because otherwise Satan is going to take away the blessing of your fingers.
Okay. So about
This is really a hadith.
Syria,
There's really 5 of them. Really, I swear, I didn't make this up. I mean, I would never be able to make something up that stupid.
Okay, so in Sahih Bukhari 3707, narrated Ubaidah, Ali said to the people of Iraq, "Judge as you used to judge, for I hate differences, and I do my best, till the people unite as one group, or I die as my companions have died."
What?
Yeah, so
Judge as you used to judge.
for a
Judge
hate.
as you used to judge. And I hate the differences, and I do my best till the people unite as one. No, fuck that. I have no clue.
This
what
is
to
a
do.
mess. It's like the situation in Syria and Iraq. It's a mess.
No, come on, but seriously,
What's a mess?
anyone explain what it says there?
I have no idea. But you can go back to the sharh of this. Maybe I can look it up, but not now. Yeah,
Remember, these hadiths are supposed to explain, right?
yeah.
Oh, I did mention as we finish on the hadith, you'll see in the video, the third video, if they recorded, I've definitely got the recording, that when Hamza spoke with Julian, towards the end, we talked about the Quran, and he basically got to the point where he accepted that there's some verses that are clear, some that aren't, and we do need to have the hadith. So I'm not entitled to, according to Darren Hamza, I'm not entitled to read the Quran and understand it myself. I need to go to scholars and I need to read the hadith, because obviously if I read it and I take a certain meaning, he's got all the scholars, he's got all the evidence, and he will just overwhelm me with so much more information that I would be forced to accept his view on whatever the Quran says, which of course flies in the face of the Quran is meant for all mankind. So at least I did get him to agree that you can't read the Quran by itself and understand it fully. So
Yeah, but that contradicts the Quran, because the Quran says it's easy to understand and remember.
okay, well, if that's the case, then there's an internal sort of contradiction. But the claim has always been that I've heard from is, yeah, the Quran was sent down for all of mankind. Well, clearly not in Arabic, so we've got to accept translations. And then if there is the translation and I'm somebody who can read and understand English, and I can look at the context in which it was read and so forth, and attempt not to be biased and go, okay, what is this actually saying here? Because the carpet came out, of course, spread out like a carpet, and the response was, well, what is a carpet flat if it goes upstairs? Go read it. Go watch part 3 of the video. You will hear the response, is the carpet flat if it goes upstairs? That was the response as to reject why spread out like a carpet is not flat.
Come on, Rob, don't you know that all stairs are spherical? Of course.
I kid you not. It's all in the video there. So yes, go and have fun. Watch that part as well.
Thank God I'm not in Speaker's Corner. I would kill myself just giggling hysterically.
Yeah, but I think they wouldn't really want to have a conversation. It was a bit like when I came down, you guys are like, hey, what about this? What about that? And like, it's very, very blunt, which, there's definitely another approach, but they would stop chatting to you very quickly, because, obviously you would just go in for the kill like instantly. And so, you know, when I tried that, they were like, no. And Subboor walked away, Ali walked away. I can't remember who else walked away. So, because you've got the same sort of approach as Ike, so I don't know that you'd have many people.
Yeah, but that was classic. That was classic. How he goes to Shabir, do you believe ants can talk? Yeah, sure, I believe that. Ants can talk, sure. Come on.
Yes, I'm sure he hasn't had that question so blind and forthrightly put. Do you believe ants can talk? I mean, how many people would say that, you know? How many people would know that that's in the Quran or the Hadith anyway? And then how many people would ask it so directly?
Do you believe that a piece of steak can revive a human being? That's when he switched on both brain cells and he realized, oh shit, I'm oh God.
And you were on the, that was brilliant because you were on the live then. So of course,
Yeah, exactly.
Ike is going, hang on a moment, and he's like listening to you. So he's like, what's going on here? Because when I'm speaking to somebody, he's got this puzzled look on his face.
Because I was just repeating what I was giving him, what I was sort of giving, and he didn't know why Ike was suddenly throwing Quran sentences at him because he wasn't thinking.
It was complete confusion. That was fun, actually.
It was fun.
Anyway, on that fun note, Abu, it's your thing. You can close us down when you're ready, my good sir.
Yeah.
And on and on and on and on.
Okay. Good night, everybody. See you next
Thanks,
week.
guys. Take care. See you next week. I might have a guest on next week. We'll see if somebody's interested in coming on, and he was going to talk about, I'll just very quickly tell you, if I get him on, if I can find it here very quickly for you, I'll literally tell you now. It would be potentially about, he sent it to me an email, it's not here. The ethics of belief in Islam, I think it is. So he's a non-believer that I met at if anybody's in London, the Unbelievable meetup is an interesting place to go. There's some smart people there, mostly Christians and atheists. I think there was one Muslim at one point, so he might come on. But I'll let you know, and we'll see what the topic is for next week. Thanks, guys.
Yes. Bye-bye.